Chapter 1002. This is. Today was probably the first time in Baihu's life that he had ever been shocked. He could not believe what he was seeing. There were 18 sword masters forming a formation and killing thousands of Wu people as if they were chopping vegetables. The whole process was as smooth as flowing water. There was no pause or hesitation. It was as if they had killed countless Wu people. My goodness, when did sword masters become so common? The guardian of Baihu clearly remembered that the number of sword masters he had seen in his life did not exceed the number of fingers on his hand. But now there were 3 times more sword masters than he had seen in his life on this small battlefield. If he hadn't seen this scene with his own eyes, the White Tiger Guard wouldn't have believed it even if you beat him to death. This military governor. Not only was the guardian of Baihu shocked, but even Yaoguang was not much better. He had guessed that the strange things that had happened in the Sanshuian garrison district had something to do with Gohan. However, Yaoguang was used to thinking that Gohan had killed all the Wu people in the Sanshuian garrison district. He did not expect that Gohan had not done it himself. Instead, he had done it with the help of his 18 ancient sword-bearers. In some ways, this was even scarier than if Gohan had done it himself. Yaoguang could not help but imagine that Gohan had not handed over 18 ancient sword-bearers, but 1,800 ancient sword-bearers. Would Shanhai Pass have peace then? Baihu, Sanshuian, I think I should change my order, Yaoguang said softly as he looked at the ancient sword-bearers. How would you like to change it, sir? The guardian of Baihu asked. I think that sending over 70 ancient sword-bearers to Anjiji Township would be suicide. Instead, we should send this ancient sword-bearers there. That way, Anjiji Township will not have to ask for reinforcements, Yaoguang said with narrowed eyes. That won't do, sir. Before the guardian of Baihu said anything, the Sanshuian was the first to speak up. Sir Taiyin, the reason why the Sanshuian garrison is able to send over 70 ancient sword-bearers is because of these 18 ancient sword-bearers. If you transfer them away, then the area guarded by the 3 water apes will be finished when we face a large-scale attack from the sorcerer tribe. What are you afraid of? Those are just pawns. The real boss is still in your Sanshuian garrison district. As long as he is here, the Sanshuian garrison will be the safest place in the entire Shanhai Pass. There is no need for you to stay here any longer. Go back to your own garrison residences. Be on your guard. The Wu people's plot could come at any time. We cannot let our guard down. Yaoguang advised the guardian of Baihu and the Sanshuian to return to their own garrison residences. However, he turned around and walked towards the Shi-Sing garrison, leaving the guardian of Baihu and the Sanshuian dumbfounded. When Yaoguang arrived at the Shi-Sing garrison's territory, he saw a man lying comfortably on a large green rock, leisurely basking in the sun. He did not seem nervous at all, as if the battle had nothing to do with him. You're finally willing to show up. I thought you were staying in the game and didn't want to come out. Yaoguang sat down beside Gohan and said with a smile. How did you know that I've been in the game? Gohan turned his head to look at Yaoguang. I remember that my name should be offline in the contact list for the past few months. How did you know that I've been in the game for the past few months? I don't have any other abilities. It's just that the Taiyin garrison has the authority to monitor the network of the entire Taiyin garrison district. I can see that the Shi-Sing garrison's network is connected to the game every day. Moreover, you haven't shown up even once in the past 3 months. If I couldn't guess that you've been in the game, I wouldn't be the guardian of the Taiyin Star. Yaoguang explained with a smile. Forget it. Why did you come looking for me? I'm just a small guardian of the *T Star. Now, not only have I helped you guard the Shi-Sing garrison, I've even helped you deal with the Sanshuian garrison. I should have saved you a lot of trouble. Don't come looking for trouble with me if you have any requests. Gohan's words blocked all possible requests from Yaoguang. Yes, Gohan was just a small guardian of the *T Star. As far as a guardian of the sh*T star was concerned, Gohan had already exceeded his quota. Other matters had nothing to do with Gohan. Don't worry. Even if you want to attack, I'll stop you. It's not time for you to show off your power. Yao Guang shook his head and said, There's something wrong with your train of thought. Gohan pursed his lips. Don't think that the Wu People's Grand Sorcerer is plotting something just because the Wu People's Grand Sorcerer didn't attack. Even if they really are plotting something, you, the Guardians of the Imperial Star and the Main Star, can't just stay at home and wait. If you guys attack, at least a few hundred of those ancient sword-grade sword-bearers will die. It's not easy for the Sword Committee to accumulate so many ancient sword-grade sword-bearers. In the end, because of your stupid decision, a few hundred more people will die. Just based on this, you will most likely go to hell after you die. 7 of the 10 great Yama Kings have been killed, and 15 of the 18 levels of hell have been broken through. Yao Guang is nothing to me anymore. Even if I go to hell, I, Yao Guang, will fight. Let's see if the Yuan Ko in hell can really skin me alive. Yao Guang laughed loudly. Gohan didn't respond to Yao Guang's words. Instead, he returned to his previous state of leisurely basking in the sun. Actually, I came to you this time to say thank you. Otherwise, the defense of my Baihu garrison district would be really bad. Secondly, I want to ask you, what do you think the Wu people are plotting? Where did their Grand Sorcerer go? At this point, Yao Guang became serious. Obviously, this question was the real reason why he came to find Gohan. Let me ask you, if your earphone cable is twisted together, how can you straighten it in the fastest way possible? Gohan suddenly asked. Find the earphone plug, then unlock it along the plug, Yao Guang answered without thinking. That's right. Finding the answer to a question is just like finding this earphone cable. As long as you find the most critical point, all the problems can be solved. Gohan stretched out his right hand and pointed at the Wu people's camp in front of him, which was already empty. Although humans have suffered heavy losses in this war, how can the Wu people's losses be small? Their losses are almost 5 times that of ours. The Wu people's Grand Sorcerer is not a fool. He won't let the war continue with such a loss ratio. However, they have never appeared from the beginning to the end. Obviously, they are preparing for some conspiracy. Yao Guang nodded repeatedly, but his expression was very pained. I say, military governor, we have already guessed what you said. We also know what the Wu people are planning, but what is their conspiracy? You didn't answer my question at all. Do you think the Wu people want to play a trick of capturing the ringleader first? Yao Guang did not wait for Gohan to answer and directly said his guess. I also know that finding the end of the wire is the most critical point. For the Wu people, there is only one such end of the wire, and that is to break through the blockade of the Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation. The Wu people have been fighting for this purpose all along. However, in the previous battles, they wanted to occupy more than 3 Imperial Star Guard areas, so as to break through the whole Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation. However, we have always neglected one point, that is, the fastest way to break through the Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation is not to occupy more than 3 Imperial Star Guard areas, but to kill the Lunar Star Guard and the Solar Star Guard at the same time. That is, Lilith and I. Then, the whole Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation will collapse in an instant. In this way, the Wu people do not need to fight hard in the Imperial Star Guard areas. Therefore, Lilith and I guessed that the Wu people's Grand Wizard is hiding behind to attract Lilith and me to the battlefield through this battle. Then, when we are fighting with the ordinary Wu people, he will suddenly appear and kill Lilith and me. In this way, no matter how many sword-bearers there are, the Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation will collapse because it loses the 2 most important big Zhou-Tian Star flags, Yao Guang said with a cold expression. Killing you and Lilith will also collapse the Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation? Gohan was stunned. Why have I never heard of this setting? This is a secret that only the Solar Star Guard and Lunar Star Guard know. Yao Guang said that this was a big secret, but he did not hesitate to tell Gohan everything. Although we told the public that only when the Solar Star Guard or the Lunar Star Guard is completely broken and the Imperial Throne is destroyed, the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation will collapse. But in fact, the Solar Star Guard and the Lunar Star Guard are the eyes of the formation. Their powers help and depend on each other. They rely on the two big Zhou Tian star flags as the relay. Once the two big Zhou Tian star flags lose their guardians at the same time, even if the Imperial Throne is still there, the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation will collapse in an instant. In the past hundreds of years, you may have heard of the death of the Lunar Star Guard or the Solar Star Guard, but you have never heard of the death of two guardians at the same time. Furthermore, every time such an important guardian dies in battle, the new guardian will take over within half an hour at the latest. We have been keeping this secret for a long time because we are afraid that Wu people will kill both of us at the same time. To be honest, killing us is much easier than fighting all the way. Yao Guang heaved a long sigh of relief. Obviously, he had kept this secret in his heart for so long that he had to say it. I see. Gohan nodded. This secret has been kept so well, but why did Wu people suddenly know about it? Didn't a traitor betray us in the previous battle? Yao Guang gritted his teeth. Later, I found out that someone hacked into the Shanghai Pass information system and secretly checked all the information of the Solar Star Guard and the Lunar Star Guard. That doesn't mean that the traitor has found out about this secret, Gohan said calmly. After finding out that Wu people might have found out about this secret, I immediately checked the information of the previous guardians in the Sword Committee. In the end, I found out that the previous guardian of the Solar Star died in a battle 7 months ago. He died in the hands of the Insect Queen, and his brain was sucked dry by the Insect Queen before he died. Gohan could not stay calm after hearing what Yao Guang said. Insect Queen? Is it the Insect Queen from another planet that can obtain all the memories of humans by sucking their brains? Gohan touched his nose. It seemed that the secret might have been leaked. Chapter 1003. However, there's still a problem. Even if the Insect Queen found out about the secret of the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation through the brain of the previous Lunar Star Guardian, the Insect Queen would not be able to find out about the secret of the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation. However, the Guardian died outside the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation after all. It's impossible for Yuan Ko to enter Shanghai Pass through the defense of the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation. Therefore, the Wu people have lost contact with the outside world for hundreds of years. How could Yuan Ko pass this secret to Shanghai Pass? Gohan asked in confusion. It must be news from the great battle 6 months ago. Yao Guang said with his lips closed. 6 months ago, the sword-bearers in Shanghai Pass used almost all the available manpower to guard the defense line. The defense forces that were originally responsible for guarding the protective shield of the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation were all transferred away. The protective shield can only stop Yuan Ko or the Wu people from entering or leaving, but it can't stop humans from entering or leaving. As long as Yuan Ko takes advantage of this time to control a human to enter Shanghai Pass through various means, they can pass the message to the Wu people. Yao Guang's words made Gohan feel enlightened. Everything seemed to make sense now. After hundreds of years of fighting, the Wu people still did not know that the death of the Lunar Star Guardian and the Solar Star Guardian at the same time would lead to the collapse of the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation. However, they could more or less find some clues through the clues that had happened over the past 100 years. Later, in order to prove Wu people's guess, the Wu people asked the spies lurking among the humans to look up the information of the previous guardians. In the end, the analysis of the information confirmed their suspicions. 6 months ago, the Wu people almost succeeded in the sneak attack. Although most of the purpose was to defeat the Zhou Tian star battle formation, it was more or less to attract human attention so that the ordinary humans who were responsible for passing the message could enter Shanhai Pass through the protective shield of the Zhou Tian star battle formation. After confirming this news, the sorcerer tribe laid low for 6 months and planned this battle within these 6 months. Through an all-out attack, the human forces would be spread out as much as possible. More importantly, Yao Guang and Lilith would be separated from the other powerful famed swordsmen, so that the two of them would be isolated and helpless. Then, the 12 hidden great sorcerers suddenly appeared at the last moment and attacked Yao Guang and Lilith at all costs, trying to kill the two guardians at the same time. In this way, the Zhou Tian star battle formation completely collapsed. Even Gohan had to admit that Yao Guang's conjecture was very accurate. He had connected all the events that had happened before, and had provided a reasonable explanation for most of the doubtful points. But there are still some problems. Gohan touched his nose and thought for a while. If things are really like what you've guessed, then Yuan Ko and the Wu people must be maintaining some kind of contact. Otherwise, the Yuan Ko outside wouldn't have deliberately killed the previous guardian of the Sun-Moon star and tried to pass this information to Shanhai Pass. But how did the Wu people keep in contact with the Yuan Ko outside? Is this a huge problem? There's another very important problem. This time, the number of Wu people involved in the attack is estimated to be about 200,000 Wu people, which is double the previous data we have. This number has not increased for hundreds of years. Why did it suddenly double in just 6 months? In the battle 6 months ago, the senior sorcerers of the Wu people did kill 5 of them. According to the rebirth speed of the senior sorcerers, it will take them at least a year to be reborn. If these senior sorcerers have not been reborn, it is impossible for the remaining 7 senior sorcerers to launch a fatal attack on you. Even if you can't defeat them, it is not a problem for you to escape. If these senior sorcerers have really been reborn in 6 months, then the problem is even bigger. I'm afraid that a huge change has happened inside the Wu people. Not only has the total number of the Wu people doubled, but the rebirth speed has also greatly increased. With the two factors combined, the strength of the Wu people has increased by more than 5 times. With such strength, even if they don't carry out a beheading operation, they can still destroy the entire Zhou Tian star big battle formation. I've also thought of these suspicious points, but it's a pity that we can't get any information from the Wu people. Yao Guang sighed. Let me ask you, do you think my conjecture is right? How likely is it that the Wu people will carry out a beheading operation on me? Although I very much hope that you guessed wrong, now it seems that you guessed right. Gohan sighed with a bitter face. Seeing Gohan's reaction, Yao Guang seemed to realize something. He immediately stood up from the stone nervously and was about to run backward. Human, why are you running? Let's get to know each other. Before Yao Guang could run a step, a Wu people with the body of a deer blocked Yao Guang's way of retreat. Fengbua. A golden light flashed in Yao Guang's eyes. He immediately stopped and stared at the senior sorcerer who had suddenly appeared from a distance. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Hurry up and kill him before anyone else comes to support us. The mountain-like Kwafu appeared to Yao Guang's right. His sharp eyes swept across Yao Guang's body, then swept across Gohan's body. Then, the instant he saw Gohan, his eyes lit up. Evidently, he had already recognized Gohan, the opponent he had fought before. Elder sister, hurry up, otherwise the meat will be eaten by them. A monster with 9 ferocious heads that spoke in a baby-like voice appeared behind the light-shaking realm cultivator. There's no need to rush. With the 4 of us attacking together, this human won't be able to escape no matter what. The bird-like Jiufeng also appeared. Just like that, 4 senior sorcerers surrounded Yao Guang from all directions. Yao Guang and Gohan instantly became birds in a cage. It was obvious that they couldn't escape even if they had wings. When Yao Guang saw that he couldn't escape, he could only return to Gohan's side with a bitter smile and ask, "When did you know that these senior sorcerers were coming?" Gohan's last sentence, "Although I really hoped that you guessed wrong, it seems like you guessed correctly," clearly meant that Gohan had discovered that the senior sorcerers had already surrounded Yaoguang. "How early could I have been? By the time I realized, you wouldn't be able to escape." Gohan rubbed his nose. "However, these senior sorcerers were able to surround the two of us without us knowing. It seems like they've already mastered the power of the void." "The power of the void? Don't try to scare me. Doesn't this mean that they've already become U-level Yuan Ko?" Yaoguang was shocked. If the 4 senior sorcerers had really become U-level Yuan Ko, then Yaoguang wouldn't even be able to struggle. He could only accept his fate and wait for death. The situation isn't that bad yet. They're just borrowing the power of the void. It's not that they have mastered the power of the void themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't have appeared after surrounding you. Wouldn't it be enough to just hide in the void and assassinate you? Gohan glanced at the 4 senior sorcerers as if he was asking for their opinion. I didn't expect a human like you to have such knowledge. A mere famed sword-level sword wielder could actually see that we're borrowing the power of the void. With your eyesight, you'll become a famous character in the future. It's a pity that you're going to die in our hands." Fengbua sneered. "Wait, can I ask you a question before we start the battle?" Gohan waved his hand and said, "Why the F***ck are you talking so much nonsense?" Jiuying's 9 heads shook. It was obvious that he didn't want to answer Gohan's question. "Wait, I'm interested to know what this person wants to ask." As soon as Jiufeng's voice fell, Jiuying didn't refute anymore. It was obvious that Jiuying respected Jiufeng a lot. Although their names seemed to be brother and sister, Gohan, who was familiar with ancient records, clearly knew that Jiuying and Jiufeng weren't related by blood. The two just happened to have the same name, and they liked to call each other brother and sister. "Speak. What do you want from us?" Fengbua said. "A very simple question. Why are there only 4 senior sorcerers? Shouldn't they be using 6 senior sorcerers to deal with the guardian of the Tying Star?" After Gohan said that, he gave an evil smile to Yaoguang. "Yaoguang, it seems that in the eyes of the Wu people, you are far inferior to Lilith. They are only willing to send 4 senior sorcerers to deal with you. To deal with Lilith, they need 8. Oh, there's more. The most powerful senior sorcerers, Xingtian, Chief-Elect, Chang'e and Hou-Yi, didn't show up. In this way, the number of senior sorcerers to deal with Lilith is 3 to 4 times more than the number of senior sorcerers to deal with you. It seems that in the eyes of the Wu people, you are indeed not worth mentioning. My good military governor, can you stop mocking me at a time like this?" Yaoguang couldn't make any other expression other than a bitter smile. "Pa, how can you say that? Who told you that the most powerful senior sorcerers are Xingtian and Hou-Yi? Let me tell you, your grandpa Jiuying can defeat both of them." Provoked by Gohan's words, Jiuying, who had the worst temper, couldn't help but want to rush up and fight. "Shut your mouth. Even 2 of you can't defeat one Xingtian." Jiufeng slapped Jiuying's face without hesitation, then said to Yaoguang solemnly, "According to our evaluation, the Tying of this generation is not weaker than the Tying, but stronger than the Tying." The sorcerer tribe was famous for being straightforward and not beating around the bush. Whatever Jiufeng said, it was the truth. "That's strange. Since in your eyes, the Tying is stronger than the Tying, why is the force sent by the Tying Star much weaker than the Tying Star?" Gohan asked again. "With someone with that bloodline around, we have no choice but to be cautious." Jiu Feng replied frankly. The bloodline she mentioned was Liunianling. It seemed like the Wu people still had a lingering fear of Liunianling, so they had to use their strongest force to fight Lilith and Liunianling. Well, the Wu people weren't wrong. The Wu people were wrong because they didn't know about Gohan's existence. Now that you've answered the question, it's time for you to die. After answering Gohan's question, Jiufeng flapped her wings and created a strong wind, indicating that the battle was about to begin. You deal with Jiufeng and Jiuying, I'll deal with Kuafu and Fengbua, Yao Guang said with his back against Guhan. Wait. They're here for you, not me. Guhan suddenly patted Yao Guang's shoulder. What do you mean? Yao Guang was shocked. I mean you'll deal with the four of them, I'll just watch from the side. Guhan said, then lay down on the big green rock and said leisurely, Don't worry, I'll save you when you're about to die. I don't know if I should say something stupid. Yao Guang was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Chapter 1004. Although he was infuriated by Guhan's attitude of watching from the sidelines, Yao Guang could not let his anger fill his head at the moment of life and death. Yao Guang knew very well what he had to do. In fact, this situation was more or less within Yao Guang's plan. After all, Yao Guang had long guessed that the Wu people's grand sorcerers would first focus their attacks on him and Lilith, so he had long been prepared. The dozens of top imperial stars and star guardians had been prepared for this moment. The moment the Wu people appeared, Yao Guang had immediately sent a command to the famed swordsmen who had been conserving their energy, asking them to rush to Xising garrison as soon as possible. Simply put, Yao Guang only needed to hold on for the most difficult 2 minutes, and the endless reinforcements would be able to turn the situation around in an instant. By then, these grand sorcerers would not be able to escape, let alone kill Yao Guang. Thinking about it, the conversation between Guhan and the grand sorcerers just now did not seem to be useless. Instead, it had successfully delayed Yao Guang for more than 40 seconds. In this way, Yao Guang would only need to hold on for slightly more than a minute before the first famed swordsmen, who were the guardian of Baihu, would arrive. Yao Guang had been in Shanhai Pass for almost 3 years, and had fought with these grand sorcerers more than 10 times. He was well aware of their strength. He was indeed no match for the 4 grand sorcerers, but it was undoubtedly impossible for them to kill him in slightly more than a minute. Yao Guang was confident that he could hold on for 15 minutes, let alone 1.5 minutes. Big Dipper sword. I'm counting on you. A cold light flashed at Yao Guang's waist, and the Big Dipper sword, which had a cold temperament, appeared beside Yao Guang, protecting Yao Guang's back. At the same time, a cold Ling sword appeared in Yao Guang's hand. This was Yao Guang's sword Maiden. This treasured sword was called the Tongxi sword. Just like the King of Yu's Gojian sword, it was also a treasured sword forged during the Spring and Autumn Warring States period. However, unlike the King of Yu's Gojian sword, which was renowned throughout the world due to it being accompanied by the King of Yu's Gojian sword, the Tangxi sword was merely a treasured sword belonging to an ordinary minor noble clan in Han. Even after it was unearthed, it did not gain much fame. However, the people of Tangxi liked to say that their Tangxi sword was the #1 sword under the heavens. That was because this sword should be older than the King of Yu's Gojian sword by over 100 years. It was the oldest iron sword unearthed before the Great Calamity. From a certain point of view, the Tangxi sword did indeed have the potential to become a famed sword. Unfortunately, in the end, it was merely a sword Maiden of the treasure sword tier. Moreover, it was ranked below the top 30 of the sword maidens of the treasure sword tier. It could not be considered a very powerful sword maiden of the treasure sword tier. However, there was one point about the Tangxi sword that was very commendable. It was extremely sturdy. Even after the Tangxi sword's protective shield was shattered, it could still fight for a very long time by relying on its own durability. Because of this, the Tangxi sword's wielder had managed to preserve his life in many life and death situations. Whenever Yuan Ko fought against the Tangxi sword's wielder, he would discover that after successfully shattering the Tangxi sword's protective shield, he would think that victory was already set in stone. Without much effort, he would be able to break this sword maiden who had lost her protective shield. Thus, he would instinctively let down his guard and become careless. In the end, when he discovered that the Tangshi sword without its protective shield was actually more durable than the Tangshi sword with its protective shield, it was already too late for Yuan Ko to regret. In the end, he could only die under the Tangshi sword. In the next second, Yao Guang and the Grand Wizards began fighting. In the game, Gohan had discovered that Yao Guang was actually a decent sword master. However, when Gohan saw Yao Guang's battle in real life, he realized that Yao Guang's strength could no longer be described as decent. Instead, it could be described as very good. How should he put it? Let's give a specific example. If the world's #1 expert, Wang Chongyang, in an unknown martial arts novel before the apocalypse, was compared to Gohan, then the current Yao Guang's strength in swordsmanship had probably reached the level of the 7 freaks of Jiangnan. Although 100 of the 7 freaks of Jiangnan might not be Wang Chongyang's match, the 7 freaks of Jiangnan were actually the top characters in the entire Jiangnan martial arts world. They could do whatever they wanted in most places. Ordinary sect leaders of small sects could not possibly be a match for the 7 freaks of Jiangnan. In this era, if all the sword masters were to be ranked, Gohan would naturally be ranked first. Then, Yao Guang might be ranked in the top 10. Of course, this was only Gohan's rough estimation, because Gohan had not seen many sword masters. Among them, the only 2 sword masters whose strength could be ranked above Yao Guang were the Confusion Sword Spirit and Liuanian Ling. As for how many other sword masters could be ranked above Yao Guang, this was something Gohan did not know. Therefore, Gohan could only generally place Yao Guang in the top 10. Let's cut to the chase and get back to business. The battle between Yao Guang and the 4 senior sorcerers had only lasted for about 20 seconds. Gohan keenly noticed that Yao Guang and the Big Dipper sword were about to collapse. The Big Dipper sword's shield still had about 80% of its energy left, but the energy of Yao Guang's personal shield was less than 30%. At most, in 15 seconds, Yao Guang's personal shield would explode. Whether it was Yao Guang or Big Dipper sword, their expressions were filled with terror. Clearly, they hadn't expected such a situation. In just 20 seconds, they were already on the brink of death. This was a situation they had never imagined would come to fruition. This is not right. Apart from Jiuying, I have fought with Jiufeng, Fengbua, and Quafu. Their strength was definitely not like this before. Gohan looked at the battle with a solemn expression. This was because the situation of the battle had exceeded Gohan's expectations. According to Gohan's estimation, it would be a piece of cake for Yao Guang and the Big Dipper sword to hold on until the Guardian of Baihu arrived on the battlefield. It would not be a problem for the personal shield to have about 60% to 70% of its energy left. However, in just 20 seconds, 70% to 80% of the personal shield's energy had been consumed. This was definitely not something that the senior sorcerers that Gohan had seen before could do. In other words, the strength of these 4 senior sorcerers had increased by more than a few times compared to when Gohan had seen them 6 months ago. No wonder they dared to besiege Yao Guang with just 4 senior sorcerers. It turns out that not only the number of Wu people has increased, but the strength of these senior sorcerers has also increased. Thinking of this, Gohan abruptly stood up from the green rock. At the same time, he shouted at Yao Guang, "Yao Guang, get out of my way!" The reason why Gohan could leisurely watch the show was because he thought that the 4 senior sorcerers would not be able to kill Yao Guang in a short period of time. Now Gohan realized that if he did not make a move, Yao Guang would really die in front of him in less than 15 seconds. In this way, Gohan could not continue watching the show no matter what. Hearing Gohan's shout, Yao Guang acted very decisively. Even if he had to bear a heavy blow from Quafu, he still forced himself to retreat hundreds of meters back to Gohan's side. At the same time, a golden long sword had appeared in Gohan's hand. The golden long sword drew an extremely twisted and unbelievable trajectory in the air. The 4 senior sorcerers, who had been chasing after Yao Guang in an awe-inspiring and murderous manner, suddenly seemed to be frozen by something. They stood still on the spot, and their bodies began to tremble violently. After a while, these senior sorcerers finally broke free from this strange state. They then touched their own chests with lingering fear. At the same time, they looked at Gohan with a fierce and slightly panicked look and asked, "What skill did you use just now? Why did this happen to us?" "I didn't use any skill. I just borrowed a little bit of the wind." Gohan smiled slightly, and said to the 4 senior sorcerers at the same time, "Our Lord Taiyin thinks that the 4 of you are not worthy to be his opponent, so he sent me, a small sh*T star guardian, to have a taste of the 4 senior sorcerers' skills." "Humph. You're full of nonsense. Just based on that sword alone, you're more than 10 times better than Taiyin. Don't you dare make fun of us." Jiuying's 9 heads spoke at the same time. The 9 voices gathered together and formed a huge resonance. If an ordinary person was here, their eardrums would probably be shattered by this sound. If the sound was any louder, the human's brain would probably burst out from their ears like crushed grape. "Everyone, let's attack together. We must kill this kid as soon as possible. Otherwise, the plan will be ruined." Kwafu let out a loud roar. He waved his peachwood staff and was the first to rush to Gohan's side. He aimed at Gohan's head and directly smashed it down. The staff was extremely fast and powerful. An ordinary sword wielder might not even be able to see where the staff came from before his head was smashed into pieces. "I hit it." Kwafu felt a burst of joy in his heart because he felt that he had hit something solid. But when he looked down, he was at a loss of what to do. His peachwood staff had indeed hit a head. However, it was not Gohan's head that he hit, but a head that looked like a monster with a sharp bird's beak. The strength of Kwafu's staff was not bad. This monster-like head had already been smashed open by Kwafu, revealing the color of feces and stinking brain inside. "Kwafu, why did you hit my head?" Jiuying cried out in pain. It turned out that this head was one of his 9 heads. "How could this be? I was clearly aiming at that human's head." Kwafu was also extremely confused. He could not understand what had just happened. It was only at this moment that the 4 senior sorcerers realized that they might have kicked on some unusually hard stubble. Chapter 1005. Kwafu, you hold this person back. The 3 of us will kill the Moon Guardian first. After realizing that they had encountered a tough opponent, Jiufeng decisively changed the battle plan. She asked Kwafu, who had the highest defense and was also the most tanky, to hold back Gohan, who was difficult to deal with. Then, they would focus their firepower on killing their real target, Yao Guang. It had to be said that this was a very reliable plan. After all, the Wu people's target had nothing to do with Gohan. Their target was Yao Guang. Now that the Alcade only had less than 30% of its energy left, killing Yao Guang was indeed much easier than killing Gohan. "Don't worry, leave it to me. I promise that this human won't be able to interfere with you." Kwafu immediately agreed. At the same time, his body began to grow rapidly, turning into a 6-story giant. "Human, I didn't expect you to become so powerful in half a year." Kwafu's voice was like the roar of an airplane engine. "However, half a year ago, you relied on that woman in the Guanghui amusement park to protect your life. Now that that woman is not by your side, you will not be able to get past my defense. And I am not the same person I was half a year ago. You have no idea how powerful we great sorcerers are." As soon as Kwafu finished speaking, countless branches shot out from the ground, all of them flying towards Gohan. "Is that so?" Gohan looked at the branches and a cold smile appeared on his face. "Moon Guardian, you can't escape." Yao Guang was not stupid. When Gohan and the 4 Wu people's great sorcerers were fighting, Yao Guang immediately began to flee towards the Baihu Guardian mansion. Whether or not Gohan could survive under the siege of the 4 great sorcerers was none of Yao Guang's business. There was nothing wrong with Yaoguang's decision. After all, the safety of the Zhou Tian star battle formation was more important than anything else. However, before Yaoguang could run too far, Jiufeng, Jiuying and Fengbua, the three senior magi who were known for their speed, quickly caught up with him. Yaoguang clearly understood that if he ran away, he would never be able to escape from the three senior magi. Instead, he would expose his vulnerable back to them. Therefore, Yaoguang could only grit his teeth and stop his escape. He then turned around and faced the attacks of the three senior wizards with the Big Dipper sword. At the same time, Yaoguang saw the mountain-like Quafu blocking Gohan's way to save him. Yaoguang clearly knew how difficult it would be for a senior magus like Quafu to entangle a person. No matter how strong Gohan was, he might not be able to get rid of Quafu in less than 10 minutes. Yaoguang did not need more than 10 minutes. He only needed dozens of seconds to die under the siege of the three senior magi. At this time, Yaoguang could not help but let out a long sigh. Am I, Yaoguang, a genius, going to die here at such a young age? Why are you talking so much nonsense, human? Go to hell. Although one of Jiuying's 9 heads had been smashed by Quafu, the remaining 8 heads were still extremely fierce, rushing towards Yaoguang. At the same time, pitch-black light balls were condensing on Jiufeng's wings. This was Jiufeng's unique killing curse, which could directly attack the opponent's soul. Meanwhile, Fengbua once again raised his Samadhi godly wind. These 3 completely different kinds of great power were rushing towards Yaoguang at the same time. Yaoguang could defend against one, but he could not defend against the second one. The situation was extremely dangerous. I can only take it head-on. At this critical moment, Yaoguang made the most correct choice. With Yaoguang's ability, it was impossible for him to dodge the attacks of these 3 senior magi, which could be considered as the ultimate attack. The only way was to find a way to maximize his defense and minimize the damage to his body, so that he could take it head-on. As long as he could take it head-on, it would be impossible for the 3 senior magi to use these 3 ultimate attacks again in a short period of time, and he would still have a chance to hold on until the Guardian of Baihu arrived. Therefore, Yaoguang instantly put the Big Dipper sword back into his hand, and then used the Big Dipper sword's advanced ability, the Big Dipper formation. The Big Dipper formation had 7 selectable enhancements, and one of the 7 enhancements was to strengthen his defense. Yaoguang used the Big Dipper formation with all his strength, and after raising his defense to the extreme, he closed his eyes and prepared to take on the impact of these 3 ultimate attacks. At this moment, Yaoguang was prepared for the energy of his body's protective shield to be depleted, or even directly broken. However, Yaoguang waited for a long time, but still did not take on the impact of the senior magi's ultimate attack. Lord Tying, you can open your eyes now. Gohan's voice suddenly rang in Yaoguang's ears, and only then did he open his eyes, only to find that Gohan had unknowingly stood in front of him. Gohan's posture was naturally extremely relaxed, while the remaining 3 senior magi looked as if they had seen a ghost. Quafu, what's wrong with you? Didn't you say that you could hold him back? Jiuying's remaining 8 heads turned around crazily, and was about to give Quafu a good scolding, but to his surprise, he found that the mountain-like huge body had disappeared. Quafu, Jiuying's 8 heads swallowed their saliva at the same time. A senior magus could not possibly disappear into thin air, so there was only one answer, and that was, Quafu had already retreat. The plan has failed. Let's retreat. While Jiuying was still swallowing his saliva, Jiufeng had already realized that the situation had completely gone out of his control. This time, it was impossible to kill Yaoguang, and on the contrary, his life might be left here by this strange man. Therefore, Jiufeng immediately decided to retreat. We humans are hospitable, please stay here, 3 senior magi. Gohan snorted coldly, and with a graceful twist of his body, he inexplicably appeared behind Fengbua. At the moment when Gohan appeared behind him, Fengbo felt his heart tighten, as if it was being squeezed by a palm. Fengbo knew that this was his soul warning him that he was facing the threat of death. Divine Wind's special attack. At this critical moment, Fengbo could only use his life-saving killer move. The wind bag in Fengbo's hand instantly opened, and more than 10 gusts of divine samadhi wind rushed out of the bag at the same time, and headed towards Gohan, who was behind him. Under normal circumstances, Fengbo's wind bag could only release 1 gust of divine samadhi wind. Only when he was in a critical situation would Fengbo forcibly release a large amount of divine samadhi wind to attack his enemy, at the cost of damaging the wind bag's origin. This was a move that Fengbo would only use when he had no other choice. Seeing the divine samadhi wind engulfing Gohan with a cloud of yellow sand, Fengbo let out a small sigh of relief. Just as he was leisurely thinking, "There's definitely no human sword wielder who can escape from the attack of more than 10 divine samadhi wind," Fengbo suddenly realized that there was a small golden thing in his line of sight. "What is this?" Fengbo's eyes instinctively widened, wanting to see clearly what this small golden light was. However, at this moment, Fengbo felt a chill on his neck, and something warm spurted out from his neck. So it's a lotus. This was Fengbo's last thought before he lost consciousness. It turned out that the small golden light was a beautiful lotus. "Brother! Let's split up." As Fengbo's head flew up high, Jiufeng recalled what happened half a year ago. At that time, she was also fleeing in a panic, but in the end, she still died under the countless sword lights. She did not expect that after only half a year, she would actually return to the exact same scene. She was also fleeing desperately, but the one chasing her was not a woman, but a man. "Sister, run, I'll stop him for you." Jiuying did not listen to Jiufeng's words. Instead, she suddenly stopped running and prepared to face this terrifying human head-on. "Idiot? What are you talking about? Run quickly. You can't stop him." When Jiu Feng saw that Jiuying had stopped, he immediately howled with a bird-like voice. "Ha ha, sister, don't forget that Jiuying has 9 heads. The time it takes for him to chop them off one by one is enough for you to escape." Jiuying's voice seemed to shake the whole world. "Don't worry, sister. Even if Jiuying dies now, Jiuying will come back to life in no time." "Jiuying." Jiufeng did not try to persuade him anymore. Instead, she flapped her wings to the limit and used her fastest speed to dig out this part of the world. After flying for an unknown amount of time, Jiufeng, who was struggling to escape, no longer had the strength to flap her wings. Like a freefall, she fell from the sky and fainted on the spot. She did not know how long she had been unconscious, but suddenly she heard a concerned voice. "Jiufeng, what's wrong?" "Xingtian. It's you?" Hearing this voice, the extremely exhausted Jiufeng finally relaxed. With Xingtian by her side, even if that human chased after her, she would be able to keep her life. "What's wrong with you guys? Have you completed the mission?" "Fengbo, where did Jiuying and the rest go?" Xingtian quickly asked. "Dead." Jiufeng's voice was no longer as loud as before. Instead, it became weak. "Dead? Who died?" Xingtian's voice became more urgent. "Jiuying, Fengbo, Quafu. They're all dead." Jiufeng's bird face was filled with sorrow. "What about the mission?" Compared to the sad Jiufeng, Xingtian's behavior was completely different. He did not seem to care about Jiuying and the rest at all. He only cared about the important mission. "You can say that it's done." Jiufeng nodded, then raised her head. "What about your mission? Have you completed your mission?" "Of course. Ho-Yi and I did it ourselves, how could we not complete it?" Xingtian pointed behind him, and Jiufeng saw an expressionless Ho-Yi walking over, carrying an unconscious girl on his shoulder. However, because the girl's face was stuck to Ho-Yi's back, she could not see her face at all. "Why are there only 2 of you? Where are Yushur and the rest?" As soon as Jiufeng asked, she immediately reacted and said in a low voice, "Could it be that Yushur and the rest are also—" "It's no big deal, you'll see them again in less than a month." Hoey said coldly, "As long as we catch this woman, even if we all die, it's worth it." Chapter 1006. Let me handle the last one. When Gohan was about to kill Jiuying, who was left behind, Yaoguang raised his voice and said, "Military Governor, you've already helped me a lot. Let me handle the last one myself. You go after the great Magus Jiufeng. Then I'll leave it to you." Gohan nodded. With a flash, he appeared behind Jiuying, then slapped hard on Jiuying's back with the sword. Jiuying's body was sent flying by Gohan, and landed right in front of Yaoguang. "Jiuying, now we can have a fair fight." Yaoguang held the Tongshi sword in his hand, while the Big Dipper sword blocked Jiuying's way of retreat. Yes, it had always been a tradition for a sword master to fight together with his sword lady. Otherwise, how could a sword master's comprehensive strength be so much higher than an ordinary sword master's? Humph! Shameless human, if it wasn't for this guy, you would have died in my hands. How could you still have the face to fight a fair fight with me alone? Jiuying said with hatred, as if it was very fair for the four great magi to fight Yaoguang alone. In terms of individual combat strength, as the two most powerful sword masters in the Zhoutian star battle formation, the Guardian of the Moon Star was more powerful than the Great Magi. Otherwise, there were 12 Great Magi, while there were only 2 Guardians of the Sun Star and the Moon Star. How could human beings successfully suppress the Wu people for hundreds of years? Since ancient times, the Guardians of the Sun Star and the Moon Star could completely suppress any Great Magi except for Xingtian in a one-on-one fight. If this Great Magus didn't have a companion to help him, there was an 80% chance that he would die in the hands of the Sun Star and the Moon Star. All in all, if it was the previous Great Shaman, Yaoguang was 100% sure that he could defeat the Great Shaman Jiuying. That was why Yaoguang suggested that he could defeat Great Shaman Jiuying alone. After all, if all the Great Magi were killed by Gohan, where would he, as the Guardian of Moontown, put his face? Unfortunately, Yaoguang seemed to have forgotten that the current Great Wizard Jiuying was not the Great Wizard Jiuying from 6 months ago. Instead, it was the Great Wizard Jiuying whose power had increased by a few times. After the two of them started fighting, even though he and the Big Dipper sword were attacking Jiuying together, they were still beaten up by the 8 heads of the Jiuying, and a lot of the energy of the shield was lost. Big Dipper formation. Yaoguang could tell that he was at a disadvantage. He had no choice but to use the Big Dipper sword's advanced skill, the Big Dipper formation. 7 stars appeared next to Yaoguang according to the arrangement of the Big Dipper, which greatly increased the attack power of Yaoguang and the Big Dipper sword. With the help of the Big Dipper formation, the situation started to turn around, and the scales of victory slowly moved towards Yaoguang. The remaining 8 heads of the Jiuying were chopped off by Yaoguang from time to time. When there were only 3 heads left of the Jiuying, the eyes of the 3 heads suddenly shone with a dazzling light, and they roared crazily, "Come on, let's die together." This was a desperate move of Jiuying. It could directly ignite the power stored in one's head, and in the end, form a huge explosion, blowing up the enemies around one and one together. To put it simply, the ability of Jiuying was to turn one's head into a powerful kick, and let one die under the brilliant fireworks. In your dreams. Yaoguang and the Wu people had fought for more than 2 years, and he already knew the skills of the Wu people, especially the skills of the Great Witch, like the back of his hand. Naturally, he had already predicted that Jiuying would use this kind of suicidal skill. Big Dipper Sealing Sword. The Big Dipper 7 stars around Yaoguang suddenly rushed into Jiuying's body. Jiuying, who was about to self-destruct, suddenly stopped. A gust of wind blew past, but the hair on Jiuying's body did not move in the slightest. It was obvious that this was not a normal stillness, but the entire space around Jiuying had been frozen. This was the ultimate skill of the Big Dipper sword, Big Dipper Sealing Sword. It could completely seal the enemy in space. Apart from their consciousness, everything else would be sealed, and they could only wait to be slaughtered. Moreover, this was an extremely high-priority control skill, and could be immune to almost all control removal skills. In other words, once one was sealed by the Big Dipper sealing sword, any skill that could remove the seal would be ineffective. In the past 1,000 years, there were many Yuan Ko who thought that they had control removal skills, and did not take these control skills seriously. In the end, they all died under the Big Dipper sword. The duration of the Big Dipper sealing sword was usually determined by the sword essence of the wielder, and the strength of the sealed person. If it was a battle between people of the same level, the duration would be about 15 seconds. 15 seconds was enough time for Yao Guang to use the Big Dipper sword to easily chop off the remaining 3 heads of Jiuying. F***CK. Boss is mighty. Long live boss. After Yao Guang chopped off the remaining 3 heads of Jiuying, thunderous applause suddenly came from around him. Yao Guang, who was fully focused on the battle with Jiuying and had no time to care about anything else, realized that the guardians of the Emperor's Star and the Main Star, such as the Baihu Guardian and the Black Tortoise Guardian, had all rushed over to provide support, and happened to witness the battle between Yao Guang and Jiuying. When they found out that Yao Guang was surrounded by 4 great wizards, they hurried over to provide support, but at the same time, they also felt a little sad. Based on past experiences, even if they could rush over in time to provide support, Yao Guang would probably be heavily injured. More importantly, among the guardians who dared to provide support, 4 or 5 of them would more or less die in the hands of the great wizards. It was just that they did not know if those who died were them. In the end, they did not expect that when they arrived, they found that Yao Guang had already killed 3 great wizards, and only the last Jiuying had not been killed. After witnessing Yao Guang's thrilling battle from start to finish, these sword-bearers were pleasantly surprised to find that their boss had single-handedly taken care of 4 great shamans. There was no need for them to risk their lives and shed blood at all. While they were relieved, they were also impressed by Yao Guang's powerful strength, and felt that the number 1 sword-bearer in the world was probably Yao Guang. Therefore, when Yao Guang killed the terrifying Jiuying with his sword, these guardians surged forward and lifted Yao Guang up high, throwing him into the air again and again, cheering for Yao Guang's victory. "Put me down, put me down!" Yao Guang struggled for a while, and finally broke free from the sword-bearers. When he was about to find Gohan to explain that it was Gohan who killed the 3 great wizards, he found out that Gohan had already left, and was nowhere to be found. "How was it? Did you kill Jiufeng?" Yao Guang searched through his personal terminal, and found that Gohan had quietly returned to his guardian's residence. Therefore, Yao Guang abandoned the sword-bearers who were planning to celebrate, and told them that they could return to their respective areas to join in the battle against the ordinary Wu people. After completely repelling the Wu people's attack, Yao Guang ran into Gohan's guardian's residence uninvited. TSK. So powerful! Uncle Yao Guang who defeated 4 great wizards alone. As soon as Yao Guang entered the guardian's residence, he was interrupted by a sarcastic voice. Don't be rude. This isn't what your Uncle Yao Guang wanted, it's just that your good brother doesn't care about fame and fortune. Gohan's voice came from the room far away. "I'm in the 2nd room on the 2nd floor. Brother Military Governor, I'm sorry, they have to rush back to participate in the battle against the Wu people, and I don't have time to explain. When the battle is over, I'll definitely explain to them clearly." Yao Guang's face was slightly red, and he was obviously hurt by Doyu's words. "That's your business, you don't have to tell me." At that moment, Gohan had changed into a set of home pajamas, and he seemed to have taken a shower. The room was filled with a faint fragrance of shampoo. From this, it could be seen that the battle between Yao Guang and Jiuying had lasted for a long time. Otherwise, Gohan would not be able to take a shower so leisurely. "I wonder why Master Yao Guang is here instead of commanding the battle?" Gohan yawned. Did you catch up with Jiufeng? Did you kill her?" Yao Guang asked. "Speed is not something I'm good at, and Jiufeng has the fastest movement speed among all the senior magi. She had decided to escape, and it was impossible for me to catch up with her, so I didn't bother to chase after her. Gohan continued to yawn. It doesn't matter if you didn't succeed, brother military governor. I, Yaoguang, have always thought highly of you, but today I realized that I've been greatly underestimating you. Yaoguang seemed to be trying to curry favor with him. After witnessing 3 senior magi being killed by Gohan with his own eyes, Yaoguang had once again refreshed his view of Gohan. Even though fleeting time Lin had killed 3 great magi before, he was still a magus. However, the senior magi that Gohan had faced today were 3 to 4 times more powerful than the ones that Liu Ling had faced. Moreover, Liu Ling couldn't kill all 3 senior magi in less than a minute. Could it be that Gohan's strength has already surpassed that of Liu Ling, the descendant of the Liu family? Yaoguang had such a frightening thought. I didn't know that I could do this. Gohan shook his head. After 3 months of special training by Kenzu in the game, Gohan knew that his strength had increased to a terrifying extent. However, he didn't expect that he could improve to this extent. 3 senior magi, who were only 1 step away from the U-level Yuan Ko, died under his sword so easily. Although Gohan was already very powerful before he started training in the game, it was still impossible for him to become this powerful. Obviously, Gohan couldn't achieve this by relying on his own hard work in a short period of time. He completely relied on Kenzu's 3 months of special training to achieve this. Lord Kenzu, you've really given me a good gift. How can I have the face to defeat all your sword marks and soul seals in the future? Gohan complained in his heart, but his belief didn't change. In the future, he would still break into the Liu family alone and find all of Kenzu's sword marks and soul seals. Then, he would compete with him and completely erase all traces of Kenzu's Kenzu. Of course, apart from Gohan's superb swordsmanship, another extremely important reason was that the sword element in Gohan's body had reached 450,000 quarks. In terms of sword element alone, Gohan was already a powerful spirit sword-level sword wielder. Without such a large amount of sword element, Gohan wouldn't have been able to kill 3 senior magi, Yuan Ko, in just a minute. Is there anything else? If not, I'll be sending you off. Gohan didn't give Yaoguang any face at all. I've thought it through. With my current strength, I'm not qualified to assume the position of Tying Star's guardian. I want to transfer this position to you. Anyway, Halfway through his sentence, Yaoguang's personal terminal suddenly rang with urgent beeping sounds of alarm. It's from Hong Yu. And it's an emergency alarm. Did something big happen to her? Yaoguang hurriedly picked up the call. After hearing Hong Yu's first sentence, his entire body froze, as if he had been frozen by his Big Dipper sealing sword. Something happened to Miss Ling. This was the first thing Yaoguang said to Gohan after hanging up. Chapter 1007. With the help of Gohan, the Tying garrison managed to survive. However, the Sun Star was in big trouble. Although Lilith, as the Sun Star Guardian, managed to survive, the outcome was worse than if Lilith had died. This was because Liu Ling had been kidnapped by the Wu people. Although Lilith had guessed that the Wu people might attack her, she did not choose to be like Yaoguang and let her top sword-bearers stay on standby instead of joining the battle at the front line. On the contrary, Lilith ordered all the sword-bearers, regardless of their strength, to join the fierce battle. Therefore, the situation on the Sun Star battlefield was much more comfortable than the Sun Star battlefield. At the very least, there would not be a situation like what happened in the Baihu garrison, where all 5 reserve troops were deployed but still not enough. The reason why Lilith dared to do this was because Lilith was not afraid that she would die under the attack of the Wu people. This was because the Sun Star garrison had Liu Ling. After giving the order for all the guardians of the Emperor Star and the main star to join the battle, Lilith stayed with Liu Ling. Lilith's thinking was very simple. With Liu Nianling's fighting ability, it would not be a big deal even if she had to face 6 senior sorcerers at the same time. As long as Liu Nianling was by her side, the senior sorcerers sent to attack her would definitely not be able to kill her. On the contrary, they might all die in the hands of Liu Nianling. Unfortunately, Lilith missed 2 points. First, she did not expect that the Wu people had already predicted the existence of Liu Nianling in advance and sent 8 senior sorcerers to kill Lilith. Among them were the strongest senior sorcerers of the Wu people, Xingtian and Hou Yi. Second, Lilith did not expect the senior sorcerers to be several times more powerful than before. Not only did these 2 points put Lilith in an absolute crisis, but Liu Nianling, who was responsible for protecting Lilith, was also in a desperate situation. Liu Nianling was indeed very powerful. Even though there were 8 senior sorcerers, and even though the strength of these 8 senior sorcerers had increased by several times, Liu Nianling was still able to fight on par with them and kill 6 senior sorcerers in the battle. Her strength could be said to be terrifying. However, the Wu people's target was not Liu Nianling, but Lilith. These senior sorcerers would rather ignore Liu Nianling's attack and hit Lilith with their own attack. Although Liu Nianling tried her best to protect Lilith and killed 6 senior sorcerers who were attacking Lilith with all their strength, Lilith was inevitably seriously injured in the end. Not only was her protective shield broken, even her famous sword, the Blood Demon Sword, was broken by Xingtian's attack. What was more insidious was that Hou Yi did not show up at this time. Instead, he was hiding in the void. When Lilith's Blood Demon Sword was broken, Hou Yi, who was hiding in the dark, immediately aimed at Lilith and shot an arrow that gathered all of his strength. Therefore, the worst situation had happened. Because this arrow contained all of Hou Yi's strength, the power of this arrow became extremely terrifying. Even Lilith, who had a full protective shield, did not have the confidence to take this sword head-on. Not to mention that Lilith had been seriously injured in the battle, and even her Blood Demon Sword was broken. The speed of this arrow was so fast that Lilith did not even notice it after it was shot. She was still foolishly standing in the same place. Lilith did not notice the arrow, but Liu Nianling did. The speed of sound in the air was not as fast as the speed of the arrow. It was too late for her to warn Lilith with her mouth. At the last moment, Liu Nianling could only use her body to block in front of Lilith and take the arrow head-on. Liu Nianling did not dare to take the arrow head-on because she was stupid. She had the life-saving equipment of the Liu Nian clan, so Liu Nianling was confident that she could take the arrow head-on and not die. The Liu Nian clan's equipment was indeed effective. Liu Nianling did not die to the arrow, but Liu Nianling's body still suffered a huge impact, so much so that Liu Nianling fell into a trance. Xingtian, who had been watching from the side, immediately rushed to Liu Nianling's side and captured Liu Nianling without much effort. Hou Yi had already lost all his strength, and Xingtian was also heavily injured in the battle with Liu Nianling. It would be impossible for him to kill Lilith in a short time, since she could still rely on the protection of a sword mistress. Coupled with the fact that the other guardians were rushing over, Xingtian could only choose to give up on killing Lilith and escape with Liu Nianling. The situation at the Sun Garrison is terrible. The Sun Garrison Lilith has lost her sword mistress, which is equivalent to losing 80% of her combat power. She won't be able to be the Sun Star's guardian anymore. She'll probably have to leave Shanhai Pass early and return to human society. That way, the Sun Star Guardian Mansion will have to choose a new guardian, Yao Guang said worriedly. That's not the worst-case scenario. The worst-case scenario is what will happen to Miss Ling. Miss Ling has been kidnapped by the Wu people. How are we going to explain this to the Liu Nian family? Yao Guang's expression became even more bitter. Moreover, the Liu Nian family has always had only one descendant in each generation. If Miss Ling really dies in the hands of the Wu people, won't the Liu Nian family have no more descendants? I can't imagine what will happen if this reaches the Sword Committee. The entire human world will probably explode. God knows what the Lunyan family will do to save their Mississippi. I don't want to stay here anymore. Yao Guang's expression was as if he had drunk 1,000 times more strong coffee. Don't worry. Linlin won't die for a while. Gohan's hand trembled uncontrollably. This was absolutely unacceptable for a person who used a sword. Since the Xingtian didn't kill her on the spot and chose to kidnap her, it means that they plan to use Ling to make a deal with us. There's no problem with Ling's safety now. We don't have to worry. Is that so? As long as Miss Ling's safety is guaranteed. Yao Guang heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Gohan's words. Things have been going on lately. It seems like I should hand over the position of the Sun Garrison's garrison to you as soon as possible. Perhaps only with your strength can you stabilize Shanghai Pass. Are you really going to hand over the position of the Sun Garrison to me? Gohan raised his head and looked into Yao Guang's eyes. Think about it carefully. Once you hand over the position to me, you will no longer be the king of the Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation. It doesn't matter if I give it to you or not. Instead, I'm worried if you're willing to accept the position. Yao Guang also stared into Gohan's eyes. I'm just a small garrison of the sh*T star. Do you think the garrison of the Emperor Star and the garrison of the Major Star will be happy if I take over the position? Will they agree to let me take over? Gohan asked again. That's simple. The 3 Grand Magi died in your hands. This is an undeniable fact. The merit points from these 3 Grand Magi are enough for you to upgrade to the position of the Sun Garrison. As for whether they are willing to accept you, that's easy to solve. Yao Guang looked at the Juzi sword beside Gohan's hand. As long as you defeat all of them, no one will oppose you. That's good. I'll take over your position. When will you pass it to me? Gohan agreed very quickly. It was so fast that Yao Guang didn't expect it. I thought with your cold personality, military governor, you wouldn't be interested in taking over my troublesome position. I didn't expect you to agree so quickly. Yao Guang shook his head. How about this? I'll make some arrangements. 1 month later, I'll pass the Sun Moon Star Zhou-Tian Star's star banner to you. 1 month? That's too long. I'm afraid that undue delay will bring trouble. When Gohan heard that there was still 1 month left, he instantly said with some dissatisfaction. Indeed, undue delay will bring trouble. How about half a month's time? Yao Guang satisfied Gohan's request and directly shortened the time by half. It's still too long. Unexpectedly, Gohan still expressed his objection. Then tell me, how long do you think is suitable? Yao Guang was helpless. He could only ask Gohan for his opinion. Tomorrow. Gohan took a deep breath. Tomorrow you will hand over the Taiying garrison to me. What? Tomorrow? Yao Guang immediately stood up from the bed. Isn't this a little too rushed? Being so impatient isn't like you, military governor? Being impatient is my personality. Gohan smiled. If I wasn't impatient, how could I have completed the instance dungeon of King Arthur's betrayal before the great waves of sea? Oh right, speaking of the great waves of sea, their sect leader Ogen still owes me a set of formation diagrams. This is still a little too rushed. 1 week. 1 week later, I will hand over the Taiying garrison to you. Yao Guang carefully calculated for a while. All sorts of matters related to the delivery, all sorts of complicated matters, all of these require time. 1 week is the fastest speed. Furthermore, although 9 of the Wu people's great magi have been killed, the ordinary Wu people still haven't retreated. Who knows, they might be plotting something else. If we change the Guardian now, it will be easy for things to go wrong. Just now you were the one who wanted to hand over the position to me. Now you are also the one who is dragging your feet. Forget it, 1 week is 1 week. You should go and enjoy your life. Based on the current situation, this position is indeed not something you can take. You are too weak. Gohan's words were merciless. I am too weak. Yao Guang carefully savored these words, and could only feel waves of awkwardness, because he realized that compared to Gohan, he was indeed pitifully weak. Even if he disregarded Gohan and Liuyan Ling, he was still the strongest person in the entire Shanhai Pass. Weaklings should give up their positions. Chapter 1008. After all the great magi had been repelled, the Wu people no longer had any reason to continue fighting. They quickly retreated from the battlefront, and the entire Shanhai Pass seemed to have returned to its peaceful state. However, everyone who knew the truth knew that a huge storm was brewing behind the peace. Who knew how furious the Liuyan clan would be when they found out that their only successor had been captured by the Wu people. Unexpectedly, the Liuyan clan was not as agitated as Yao Guang had expected. They had only sent a message asking the Shanhai Pass Management Committee to do everything they could to help Liuyan Ling. Their calm attitude made Yao Guang wonder if the Liuyan Ling that had been captured was a fake Liuyan Ling. Gohan had guessed that the Liuyan clan would have such an attitude in advance, because Gohan had vaguely deduced something from Liuyan Ling's words. Liuyan Ling had always held an absolute trump card in her hand, and this trump card could probably even defeat a powerful opponent like Flood or Desolation level Yuan Ko. It would not be difficult to preserve one's life from the Wu people. As long as Liuyan Ling's life was not lost, it was not a big deal to the Liuyan clan. After all, they had an abundance of sovereign blood, and they could afford to use another 10,000 cubic centimeters of it. However, Liuyan Ling's matter was not the most urgent. The most urgent matter was the Sun Star Garrison. The original Sun Star Garrison's famed sword mistress, Lilith's famed sword, had been broken, and she could no longer take up the position of Sun Star Garrison. She had voluntarily given up the position, and handed over her Sun Star Great Zhou Tian Star Time banner. Although this ending seemed very miserable, Lilith also obtained a benefit. She could leave Shanhai Pass in advance and return to the outside world. This was a common rule in the mountain pass. Originally, every sword wielder had to stay in the mountain pass for 3 years. However, if an ancient sword wielder's ancient sword rank sword lady or famed sword wielder's famed sword rank sword lady were broken in battle, they would lose almost all of their strength. They would no longer be able to take on the role of a guardian. Naturally, they would not be allowed to stay in the mountain pass any longer. However, leaving Shanhai Pass in such a manner was not an outcome that any sword-bearer in Shanhai Pass was willing to see. Once his sword lady broke, it would mean that his future as a sword wielder was over. If an ancient sword rank sword wielder's sword lady was broken, as long as they found all the broken pieces of the sword lady, there was a high chance that their artificial sword lady could be repaired. As for the innate sword lady, there was nothing she could do about it. She could only look for the best swordsmithing grandmaster of the human race to see if she could repair the innate sword lady. Otherwise, she could only leave it in the sword burial ground and wait for the power of the sword burial ground to slowly repair the broken innate sword lady. However, by the time the natural sword lady was repaired in the sword burial grounds, the original sword wielder's bones would probably have turned to dust. This was also the advantage of artificial sword ladies. Although they were not as strong as the natural sword ladies, they were much easier to repair. Back to the main point, Lilith sadly gave up her position as Sun Star Garrison's Sun Star Garrison. After a short discussion, the new Sun Star Garrison's Sun Star Garrison was unsurprisingly given to Hong Yu. After all, Hong Yu was the most experienced sword-bearer in the Sun Star Garrison. She was also the strongest and had the most merit points. She deserved to be the Sun Star Garrison's Sun Star banner. Due to Liuyan Ling's sudden appearance, the position could have been given to Liuyan Ling. However, now that Liuyan Ling had been kidnapped, no one knew when she would be rescued. The position of Sun Star Garrison's Sun Star banner could not be left empty for too long. Therefore, 20 minutes after Lilith stepped down, Hong Yu planted the Sun Star banner on the Zhou Tian star and became the Sun Star Garrison's Sun Star Garrison. If the players in the game knew about this, they would be shocked. The two higher-ups of the Yaoguang sword faction had become the Sun Star Garrison and the Moon Star Garrison at the same time. This was an achievement that other sword factions could never achieve. The day passed with excitement. The entire Shanghai Pass was immersed in their own excitement. Apart from Yaoguang, who had mixed feelings, no one noticed what the badly named *T Star Garrison's Guardian was doing in the Shi Sing Garrison. As a matter of fact, after Yaoguang left, Gohan fell into a deep sleep. Gohan opened his eyes abruptly when the moon hung high in the sky. He jumped out of bed and put on all his equipment. At the same time, he carried all 6 of his sword maidens with him. "Are you going to save Miss Linlin?" When Gohan finished all this, the voice of Qi sounded faintly in his mind. "Yes." Gohan nodded. "Didn't you say her life isn't in danger? Why did you disregard everything to save her?" Qi didn't seem to want to let Gohan go, and continued to ask questions. At the same time, Gohan sensed that Qi wasn't the only consciousness in his mind. There were 5 other consciousnesses hiding somewhere. The 5 consciousnesses were obviously Juzi, Qin Pin, Douyu, and the others. These unlucky kids were naturally interested in the gossip of the sword bearer. In fact, Gohan could sweep all 5 consciousnesses out of his mind with a single thought. However, Gohan had no intention of doing so. Instead, he decided to try his best to explain the problem. There's always a what-if in this world. I received a favor from Kanzu in the game. Although I will have to settle things with Kanzu in the future, I have to repay his kindness. At the very least, I need to make sure that Ling is safe. Moreover, this matter isn't as simple as it seems. I feel that there are other conspiracies lurking in the shadows. I should also go to the Wu people to gather some information. After all, this concerns the safety of the entire human race. Gohan gave many reasons. "So, you're still doing this for Miss Ling, right?" Although Gohan gave many reasons, Qi seemed to only be focusing on Liuanian Ling. Well, all women were like that. The question of where their man went last night was more important than whether the world would be destroyed tomorrow. "She's really just passing by. Why don't you believe me?" Gohan tried to persuade him. "Gohan, do you know? You never explain the same thing twice, but you've already explained it 3 times. Qi sentence sounded a bit unreasonable, but in fact it was a huge blow to Gohan's heart. Not only was Gohan hit, but the other 5 eavesdropping consciousnesses were also hit. "Gohan, don't tell me you've really fallen in love with that woman? Don't tell me you don't want Qin. Brother, I have a problem with that woman being my sister-in-law." "Brother Gohan, do you need premarital guidance?" "Master, apart from the past water sword, the other 4 consciousnesses couldn't care less about hiding themselves anymore. They all jumped out and asked Gohan if he really liked Liuanian Ling. Such a chaotic situation almost made Gohan's head explode. Therefore, Gohan decided not to maintain his good master image anymore. He directly swept the 6 consciousnesses out of his mind. "No matter what happens in the future, you will always be my sword maidens. This will never change." While expelling the consciousnesses from his mind, Gohan also said this to them. Late at night, the Wu people's tribe was quiet. The Wu people were a very strange race. Although they were a race of the lawful camp, the Wu people always liked to do wild and unruly things. Some ancient legends such as Quafu chasing the sun, Ho-Yi shooting the sun, Xingtian fighting the heavens, Jiufeng causing chaos, and so on could indirectly prove the temperament of the Wu people. In the recent ancient times, it was said that the shadow of the Wu people was behind every change of dynasty. For example, behind the death of Xia Jie, it was said that Mei Shi was the intermediate sorcerer of the Huda tribe, while Yi of the Shang-Tang tribe was the great sorcerer of the Tianwu tribe. In the Great Qin Empire, it was said that the entire Great Qin was passed down from the bloodline of the Wu people. This was because the origin of the bloodline of the Qin people, Feilian, the ancestor of the Qin people, was the great sorcerer of the Wu people. The humans had sufficient evidence for this, because the great sorcerer of the Noais tribe in the Shanhai Pass was Fei Lian. However, it was also very inappropriate to say that the Wu people were a race of the chaotic camp. For example, after 10 o'clock in the evening, the entire Wu people fell into a deep silence. Apart from the Wu people who were in charge of the night watch, all the Wu people had fallen into a deep sleep. They were not like humans, who would have a large group of people who were excited even at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. The entire race was so punctual, which was not something that a race with a chaotic nature could do. All in all, the Wu people were a rather strange race. However, the Wu people's habit of sleeping early also made things very convenient for Guhan. Guhan only needed to avoid the hidden sentries to easily sneak into the Wu people's tribe. To be honest, avoiding the eyes of these sentries did not require any skill. Guhan could easily do this. The real difficulty was that Guhan did not know which tribe Liuyan Ling was imprisoned in by the Wu people. Ever since the great battle 6 months ago, the sorcerer tribe had gathered all the tribes that were scattered in different places together for the first time. They formed 12 extremely large tribes that were arranged according to the shape of the heavenly stems and earthly branches. Because the Wu people did not have tall buildings, all the Wu people lived in small tents in 2s and 3s. Therefore, each super-large tribe of the Wu people occupied a large area, which was as large as the third ring of Yanjing City before the Great Calamity. Guhan spent 2 hours to barely finish searching the tents of Liuyan Ling in the Zhurong tribe, but he failed to find any trace of Liuyan Ling. It would take him 1 to 2 hours to arrive here from the Shixing garrison, and it would also take him the same amount of time to go back. When Guhan finished searching the entire Zhurong tribe, the sun had already risen. If he searched the next tribe, he would definitely be discovered by the countless Wu people. Helplessly, Guhan could only choose to retreat. In this way, Guhan could only search one Wu people's tribe in one night. God knew how long it would take for Guhan to find Liuyan Ling. Chapter 1009. There was a reason why Guhan chose the Zhurong tribe as his first search target, because the Zhurong tribe had the Xingtian, the most powerful senior magus. In order to ensure that Liuyan Ling would not escape, the best choice was to let the Xingtian guard Liuyan Ling. Unfortunately, it seemed that Guhan had guessed wrong. Liuyan Ling was not imprisoned in the Xingtian tribe. Guhan had no time to search for other tribes, so he could only temporarily return to the Shixing garrison, recuperating and preparing to continue the search the next night. As a result, the search lasted for 5 days. Guhan had searched the 5 most powerful tribes among the 12 Zhuwu tribes, Zhurong, Shebi-Shi, Dijiang, Hotu and Xianming, but the result was the same. He could not find any trace of Liuyan Ling. This inevitably made Guhan a little suspicious. Since Liuyan Ling was not imprisoned in the 5 most powerful tribes, there were only 2 possibilities. One was that the Wu people did the opposite and imprisoned Liuyan Ling in the weakest tribe. Or Liuyan Ling was not imprisoned in a large tribe where the Wu people gathered, but in a special place. Therefore, on the 6th day, Guhan decided to search directly in the weakest Tian Wu tribe. If he could not find any clues about Liuyan Ling, he could only take the risk of entering the tent of a senior magus and find a way to force the location of Liuyan Ling from the mouth of the senior magus. The result was mixed. Guhan still could not find any trace of Liuyan Ling in the weakest Tian Wu tribe, but Guhan made an unexpected discovery. That was, Guhan actually found traces of human beings in the Tian Wu tribe. It was a piece of shiny tin foil left on the ground. Guhan sneaked over and touched it in his hand to take a look. It turned out to be a small piece of tin foil used to wrap chewing gum. Putting the tin foil in front of his nose and smelling it, Guhan could clearly smell the fragrance of chewing gum. It was obvious that this tin foil was not left behind a long time ago, but had just been peeled off and discarded here. Could it be that there are others like me who want to investigate Liuyan Ling's whereabouts? As soon as this thought appeared in Gohan's mind, Gohan rejected it. The reason was very simple. Even an expert like Gohan had tried his best to hide everything in his heart when he sneaked into the Wu people's tribe, not daring to reveal even the slightest flaw. However, this person dared to directly throw a piece of tin foil used to wrap chewing gum in the Wu people's tribe. He was not afraid that the Wu people would find out about this tin foil, which proved that this person did not care about hiding his whereabouts in front of the Wu people. There were only two explanations for this. Either this person was invincible in the world and could beat all the Wu people by himself, and he was confident that he would not force the Wu people to kill Liuyan Ling to vent their anger. Or, this person had a close relationship with the Wu people. Gohan did not forget the traitor who appeared in the battle 6 months ago, and until now, the traitor had not been found. Gohan did not think that there was any sword-bearer in Shanhai Pass who could be more powerful than him. Obviously, this person was the traitor who humans had never been able to find. Why did he suddenly appear in the Wu people's tribe? Could it be that he and the Wu people were still brewing some conspiracy? However, this tin foil had been here for a period of time. Gohan could not determine where the traitor had gone. It would be good if there was a dog at this time. If there was a dog, it could use the scent of the traitor left on the tin foil, and then follow the scent all the way. It would definitely be able to find clues about the traitor. However, how could Gohan sneak in here with a dog? Not to mention Anubis. Although that guy had a nose that was much more sensitive than a dog's, he was now in charge of secretly protecting Yuzhong City, which had lost its immortal sword-bearer. Even if he was near Shanhai Pass, it was impossible for him to enter the Zhou-Tian Star Battle formation. Hey! Is there anyone among you who is particularly sensitive to smell? Gohan tentatively asked his sword lady. He did not expect that after a while, the past water sword would take the initiative to say that she was very sensitive to smell and could help Gohan search for the traitor's whereabouts. Thus, Gohan took the tin foil and hid in a hidden corner. Then, he released the past water sword and let the past water sword sniff the scent on the tin foil. Then, the past water sword crawled on the ground and sniffed around. Finally, it pointed to the northwest, indicating that the owner of the tin foil had gone in that direction. Naturally, it was impossible to determine the opponent's location once. It required the past water sword to continuously lie on the ground and search. This kind of behavior was naturally a noble and commendable behavior. However, the posture of the past water sword lying on the ground was very easy for one's imagination to run wild. Especially when the past water sword had a round, beautiful, and plump buttocks. Especially when this buttocks unconsciously stuck up because of the action of lying on the ground. It took the initiative to send itself in front of Gohan, and was level with Gohan's crotch. And as the past water sword's head kept moving on the ground, this beautiful buttocks also unconsciously swayed left and right in front of Gohan. It was a wonderful circle, as if inviting Gohan. In fact, at this time, Gohan only needed to slightly push forward to fully feel the beautiful buttocks. Together with the bright moonlight in the sky, a poem suddenly appeared in Gohan's heart. Raise the buttocks to invite the bright moon, and the shadow becomes one person. Ahem, I must make it clear in advance. Gohan didn't know that the original version of Raise the buttocks to invite the bright moon, and the shadow becomes 3 people. The poem just now was completely Gohan's own creation. What the hell are you thinking about? The past water sword instantly sensed Gohan's despicable thoughts. It angrily turned its head and looked at Gohan. But the problem was that the past water sword only moved its head, and its body still maintained the posture just now. Coupled with those resentful eyes, the charm she exuded actually increased by a few notches. Ahem. Nothing, just thinking about something. How is it, did you smell anything? Gohan quickly changed the topic. Yes. The past water sword didn't want to talk about this topic anymore. Just now it was just a moment of shame. Now, it quickly replied to Gohan, it's in that tent, the smell disappeared in that tent. Hearing the past water sword's words, Gohan immediately stuck to the side of the tent. His finger only lightly touched the tent, and he immediately sensed that there was no life in the tent. Thus, he brought the past water sword directly into the tent. In the end, he was shocked to find that there was an activated void gate in the tent. Through the void gate, he could clearly see that the other side of the void gate was already open. Gohan only needed to go through this void gate to reach the other place. Could it be that there is already a universe-level Yuan Ko among the Wu people? Seeing this void gate, Gohan was shocked. In order to open the void gate, it required the void power of a universe-level Yuan Ko. Since this void gate could be kept open for a long time, didn't it mean that there was already a universe-level Yuan Ko among the Wu people? Of course, there were still a lot of uncertainties. If the Wu people really had an existence equivalent to a universe-level Yuan Ko, then they didn't need to spend so much effort to arrange for spies. As long as this universe-level Yuan Ko made a move, most of the famed sword-rank sword-bearers would be like chickens and dogs in front of this universe-level Yuan Ko. Also, with the universe-level Yuan Ko's mysterious void power, he could kill all the guardians of the Sun Star and the Moon Star without anyone noticing. At that time, the Zhou Tian Star battle formation would be broken, and they wouldn't need to fight as hard as they were now. However, it was better to be safe than sorry. To be cautious, Gohan would rather believe that there was such a universe-level Yuan Ko among the Wu people. Then, there would be a problem. If Gohan went through this void gate as a living person, he wouldn't be able to escape the senses of the void gate's master. At that time, he would have to face the universe-level Yuan Ko. Putting aside whether or not he could defeat the universe level, Gohan's plan to sneak in would fail at the last step. This was obviously not a worthwhile move. Therefore, after thinking for a while, Gohan decided not to go through this void gate. Instead, he would let the past water sword go through. The void gate couldn't sense dead objects. As long as Gohan let the past water sword go through the void gate in its sword form, it wouldn't attract the universe-level Yuan Ko's attention. At most, it would just pass by like a gust of wind. At that time, Gohan would only need to share Flowing Water's 5 senses to detect the situation on the other side of the void gate. As for why he chose the past water sword to complete this task, the reason was simple. At this time, the past water sword was right beside him in the form of a sword lady. Also, the past water sword helped him in such an embarrassing position, like a little bitch. However, at this time, he threw the past water sword aside and replaced it with a sword lady. Do you think the past water sword would feel comfortable? Moreover, there was a gap between the past water sword and Gohan. Gohan didn't want to widen this gap from time to time. After all, the past water sword was also his sword lady. This was a fact that couldn't be changed. Gohan told his idea to the past water sword, and the past water sword nodded in agreement. Therefore, Gohan turned the past water sword back into its sword form and threw it directly to the other side of the void gate. Then, the past water sword turned into a sword lady in midair. Gohan immediately hid his own body, and entered the past water sword's body through the sword mark. After getting the past water sword's consent, he successfully shared the 5 senses of the past water sword, and saw the situation in the world where the past water sword was. On the other side of the void gate was a lush jungle. With the help of Flowing Water's eyes, Gohan carefully observed the surroundings, and found traces of people walking not far away. Under Gohan's command, Flowing Water moved forward along these traces, and finally found a hot spring in front of them. 2 heads quietly floated above the hot spring. One of these 2 heads was a human head, and although the other head was also a human head, there were 2 sharp horns on his head. The 2 horns looked very special, like 2 sharp sickles. Seeing these 2 horns, Gohan knew who the owner of this head was. He was the strongest among the great Magi Xingtian. Chapter 10:10. One of the two people in the hot spring was the most powerful great shaman, Xingtian. Then who was the other human head that was with the Xingtian? Could it be the traitor? Guhan pondered silently. Suddenly, he heard the Xingtian say impatiently, "I don't understand. Is it really that comfortable to soak in this ice-cold water? This is the best enjoyment I've ever had in my life. Back then, I spent over 10 years of painstaking effort to build a huge house in Mount Lee, and I even dug a huge hot spring in that house. Unfortunately, I was too comfortable in the hot spring and accidentally lost control of my power. As a result, the entire house was burned down. Now that I think about it, it's quite a pity," another human said in a lazy tone. Mount Lee? Guhan began to search for information in his mind when he heard this name. However, he could not find any memories related to Mount Lee. Clearly, Mount Lee, like many other places, had disappeared in the great cultural collapse. However, it was strange that this place was clearly a place that had disappeared. Why did this human traitor feel so familiar with it? He had even built a big house on that mountain. Apart from the Lun Yen family, there was no other human in this world who had the ability to build a big house outside of a headquarters city. So that unlucky man took the blame for you for 3,000 years? The Xingtian suddenly laughed. Yes. I didn't want him to take the blame for me. However, I died in his hands back then. It's only natural for him to take the blame for me. The human traitor laughed. These words sounded strange to Guhan. What did he mean by died in his hands back then? Could it be that this human was already dead? Then why did he still appear alive here? However, ever since Yuanko appeared in this world, all sorts of strange things could happen. Among Yuanko, there was no lack of existences who had mastered the art of resurrection. Could it be that it was these Yuanko who resurrected this dead human? But that didn't seem right. In the past, there had been humans resurrected by Yuanko. Even sword-bearers had been resurrected by Yuanko. However, regardless of whether they were ordinary humans or sword-bearers, the sword essence in their bodies would dissipate completely after they were resurrected. It might be possible for such a resurrected person to disguise as an ordinary human, but it was impossible for them to disguise as a sword-bearer. More importantly, this human actually referred to himself as we. Since ancient times, only the various Jiendi in history had been able to refer to themselves as we. Of course, not all Jiendi liked to refer to themselves as we. At the very least, I Ching had never referred to himself as we in front of Guhan. Emperors before the Great Calamity had naturally died without even their bones. Could it be that this person was a certain Jiendi in history? Just like the Ming Yuan Jiendi who had betrayed humanity in order to pursue immortality? Of course, this was naturally impossible. Apart from the Ming Yuan Jiendi, all the other Jiendi had clear records. Their sword ladies were also kept in the sword pavilion. There was only one Ming Yuan Jiendi since ancient times. There was definitely no second one. Even if there was a hidden Jiendi who had betrayed humanity, as long as he stepped into the Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation, the Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation would immediately collapse. There was no need for any conspiracy. As for the possibility of resurrecting Jiendi, it was even more ridiculous. Every Jiendi clearly knew how long they could exist in this world. This time could even be accurate down to the second. That was why Jiendi would take the initiative to ascend to immortality before the end of their lifespans. They would not even leave a single hair in this world, let alone leave behind a corpse for Yuan Ko to resurrect. Actually, there was one last possibility. This person did not have the right to call himself emperor. He was just envious of this title and used it to comfort himself. This was actually the most likely possibility. No matter which possibility it was, this human's identity was still a huge question mark. Was he really a human? Was he really a traitor hiding in the Shanhai Pass? If they wanted to uncover this mystery, they naturally had to continue eavesdropping. The Xingtian continued, "According to your plan, that human with the bloodline, has already been imprisoned in the land of Zhu Wu. How are your preparations going? It's still within this emperor's plan. The human who called himself emperor said, the key is on your side. It's not that easy to trap the people of the Lunyan family. If something goes wrong in the land of Zhu Wu and Liuyan Ling escapes, then our plan will be in danger. I know that. We lost 6 brothers in order to capture her, so we don't dare to let our guard down. Right now, Jiufeng and Ho Yi are watching her in the land of Zhu Wu. After I'm done talking to you, I'll head over to the land of Zhu Wu. With the 3 of us watching her, she won't be able to escape. Humph. You'd better be careful. It's not like you don't know about the Lunyan family's foundation. Back then, even an invincible existence like the ancestor god was sealed by fleeting time's yoke. Who knows if that Liuyan Ling still has other trump cards? By the way, did you take away her dimensional pocket? Of course. I've already placed her dimensional pocket in an absolutely safe place. It's a pity that we can't open it no matter what. Otherwise, I'd be able to see what treasures the Lunyan family left behind for their descendant. Xingtian smiled. Very good. Jiuying, how long will it take for Gonggong and the others to come back to life? The human nodded and asked. Jiuying. Gonggong was a great magus. This human was clearly asking when the 9 great magi who died at the hands of Gohan and Liuyan Ling would come back to life. Soon. These days, Zhu Wu's essence blood has been boiling. The speed at which they're coming back to life has far exceeded my expectations. I thought that it would take them 5 months to come back to life, but it seems that they'll be able to return to this world in 3 days at most. Very good. If that's the case, we still have time. The human nodded. Tomorrow is the day that the position of the Moon Guard will be passed to that Gohan. I will try my best to delay it until all of our brothers are resurrected. Before that, I'm afraid I won't have the time to come here to see you. When that time comes, I hope that you'll strictly follow my plan and not make any mistake. This person must be the traitor. Hearing this, Gohan could already confirm that this person was the traitor hiding among the sword-bearers. Furthermore, his status was not low, and he knew many things about the Shanhai Pass. Only the Imperial Star, the main star, and the guest star of the Shanhai Pass would know that Yaoguang would pass the position of the Moon Guard to him tomorrow. This human traitor must be a famous sword-bearer. No matter if he was at a higher or lower level, he would not be able to sit in the position of the Imperial Star, the main star, and the guest star. But this way, the identity of this traitor became very difficult to figure out. He could be brothers with the great shaman of the Wu people, and was used to calling himself At the same time, he was a famous sword-bearer on the surface. Is there a need to be like this? Xingtian's voice was vaguely disdainful. Our plan has been carried out so perfectly, and most of the steps have already been completed. Now we're only 1 step away. Actually, I feel that even if your identity is exposed, even if our plan is completely leaked to the humans, they won't be able to stop our plan. Victory is already ours. How big was my empire back then? How stable was my empire back then? Who in the world didn't crawl and tremble at my feet? But in the end, in a mere 3 years, my empire was taken by a small county's public security bureau chief. Do you really think that there's anything in this world that's foolproof? The person said. This person's tone was completely lecturing, and Xingtian, who was being lectured, did not retort, but instead allowed the person to lecture him. If people who were familiar with Xingtian's temper saw this scene, they would probably be so shocked that their mouths could not close. That Gohan's strength is too terrifying, and his growth is too fast. He's the most dangerous thing in this Zhou Tian star battle formation. What's more terrifying is that his intelligence is not inferior to mine at all. I even feel that everything we've done will still be ruined by his hands in the end. He did not expect this traitor to think so highly of Gohan. Gohan thought that in the entire Zhou star battle formation, other than the sword-bearers who came in with him, only Yao Guang knew his true strength. In the end, he did not expect this traitor to completely see through him and treat him as the biggest hidden danger to guard against. Humph. No matter how powerful she is, can she be more powerful than the descendant of the Lunyan family? In the end, she was still captured by us. Xingtian's tone was still disdainful. Don't forget that Kuafu and the other two didn't even last a minute in Gohan's hands, the human traitor said sternly. That's because Kuafu and the others are useless. This time, I have obtained the godly power of Master Zhu Wu, and my strength has reached the universe level, Yuan Ko, or some deity level sword-bearers. That guy named Gohan is definitely no match for me, Xingtian said proudly. Power. Power, power. You only have power in your head. The human traitor shouted at Xingtian. Remember, from a distance, humans were able to defeat us and become the protagonists of the prehistoric world. From a closer perspective, humans were able to trap us in this damn Zhou star battle formation for such a long time, not because they are stronger than us, but because they know how to use their brains. This is also the most important thing I learned when I hid among the humans. Sometimes, a good brain is better than 10 of your fists, Xingtian. Tell that guy named Gohan to come out. I want to see if his brain is harder or my fists are harder. Xingtian suddenly stood up from the water and looked around with his sharp eyes. Are you crazy? How could Gohan be here? The other person also came out from the hot spring and finally exposed himself in front of Gohan. Chapter 10-11. When Gohan saw the face, he was extremely excited because he felt that he could finally find the traitor hidden among the humans. However, when Gohan saw the face clearly, he fell into a state of helplessness. This was a face that Gohan had never seen before. Gohan did not dare to say who all the sword-bearers were, but Gohan had secretly memorized the faces of all the famous sword-bearers in Shanghai Pass. If this traitor was one of the famous sword-bearers, then Gohan would definitely be able to recognize him immediately. However, this face did not belong to any of the faces that Gohan remembered. There were only two possibilities. Either this traitor was not a famous sword-bearer, or this traitor had hidden his true appearance, or the face that he saw in Shanghai Pass was still fake and this was the traitor's true appearance. Gohan was more inclined to the second answer. I'm not crazy. Xingtian pushed the traitor away. If that Gohan is really as intelligent as you say, and has the luck to ruin our entire plan, then we will have to deal with him. Does he have the ability to guess that we would meet here? Does he have the ability to appear here? Gohan. Show yourself if you have the ability. Show yourself if you have the ability. Eavesdrop on our conversation if you have the ability. Show me your intelligence and luck. Xingtian continued to clamor loudly. How could he possibly appear here? Not to mention the humans, even the other Wu people did not know that we would meet here. It's impossible for him to appear here. The human traitor could only say helplessly when he saw Xingtian going crazy. However, Xingtian ignored the traitor's words and continued to clamor for Gohan to come out and meet him. Seeing this, Gohan suddenly had an urge to jump out and tell Xingtian to stop clamoring. He was really eavesdropping on their conversation. Of course, until the end, Gohan did not do such a stupid thing. Instead, he hid himself even more discreetly so that the Wu people would not be able to find his whereabouts. After going crazy today, the traitor patted Xingtian's naked upper body and said, "Open the door and let me go back. The sun is about to rise." Damn it, I did not open the door for you. After calming down, Xingtian still grumbled unhappily. However, he still opened the void door for the traitor. The traitor directly entered the void door and left. Seeing this scene, Gohan secretly felt that it was a pity. If the traitor had chosen to walk back, Gohan might have been able to find out the traitor's true identity by tracking him. However, the traitor went back through the void door. Of course, Gohan could not pass through the void door in front of Xingtian to track the traitor. He could only helplessly watch the traitor leave his sight and eventually disappear on the other side of the void door. After the traitor left, Xingtian kicked down a few trees as if to vent his anger. Then, he went through the void door and returned to the Heavenly Wu tribe. Of course, at this time, Gohan had already left the tent. His consciousness had also returned to his body. Then, he chased after the past water sword and finally arrived at the place where Xingtian and the traitor had soaked in the hot spring. He came here to see if he could find any other clues about the traitor. Unfortunately, Gohan searched the entire nearby area and even swam in the hot spring. However, he did not find any valuable clues. In the end, he could only return to the Shi Sing garrison. However, it could not be said that Gohan did not get any valuable information. At least, Gohan confirmed that Liuyan Ling was imprisoned in a place called Zhu Wu. Although Gohan had never seen this name in any information, he could guess that this place must have a close relationship with Zhu Wu. It was very likely that this was the place where the blood of Zhu Wu was hidden. At the same time, Gohan also confirmed the existence of the traitor. This traitor must be one of the sword-bearers of the Taiying garrison, and it was very likely that he was one of the sword-bearers of the Taiying garrison. Because only the sword-bearers of the Taiying garrison would know that Yaoguang was going to pass the position of the guardian of the Taiying Star to him tomorrow. At this time, the Sun Star garrison was still in a mess. Except for a few special people, no one was interested in the matters of the Taiying Star garrison. Those senior magi who had died in the hands of Ji Hao and Liuyan Ling would be resurrected in 3 days. Including the previous week, only 10 days had passed. The senior magi of the Wu people could be resurrected in only 10 days. If this news got out, the entire Shanhai Pass would definitely fall into panic. Previously, the resurrection time of the senior magi of the Wu people of 1 to 3 years was already difficult for the sword-bearers to handle. This time, if they could really be resurrected in only 10 days, to some extent, the number of senior magi of the Wu people was equivalent to more than 30 times. There was no need for the ordinary Wu people to do anything. As long as these senior magi carried out a massacre in the human territory every 10 days with the thought that they were going to die, all the human sword-bearers would probably die in a few months' time. The last and most important piece of information was that the traitor of the Wu people wanted to delay the day when Yaoguang passed the position to him so that he could buy time for the resurrection of the senior magi. According to Yaoguang's arrangement, the ceremony of passing the position to the Wu people would be held tomorrow. Of course, the senior magi of the Wu people would not be resurrected tomorrow. Therefore, the traitor would definitely try his best to delay this matter. The ancients often said that the more one spoke, the more mistakes one would make. Since it was easy to give himself away by talking too much, it was impossible to do too much. Gohan was certain that the traitor would definitely cause some trouble tomorrow. As long as he kept a close eye on every corner, he would definitely find the traitor's flaws. Of course, although Gohan was powerful, it was naturally unrealistic to rely on one person to monitor every place. Therefore, in the end, Gohan still had to ask for help from a good helper. Jina-chan, I'll leave everything to you. Please help me monitor all the surveillance systems in the entire Shanhai Pass. Don't let go of even a single surveillance camera. If it's possible, I hope that you can also monitor the personal terminals of the sword bearers. If you discover any abnormalities, inform me immediately. Gohan instructed Tomono Kakashi through his personal terminal. Yes, that's right. The helper that Gohan could ask for help was naturally Tomono Kakashi. Other than that, there was no one else that Gohan could ask for help. In fact, there was no one else who could do what Tomono Kakashi had done. This was actually a very outrageous matter. It was a serious violation of Tomono Kakashi's principles as the highest intelligence. In the past, Tomono Kakashi would most likely reject Gohan's request. However, the problem now was that Tomono Kakaze owed Gohan a huge favor. After Gohan successfully passed all of Kanzu's training, Gohan specifically asked Kanzu to think of a way to prevent Tomono Kakaze from being formatted. After hesitating for a while, Kanzu finally agreed to help Tomono Kakaze. In the end, no one knew what Kanzu did, but the Research Institute finally decided not to format Tomono Kakaze anymore. At the same time, this matter was forever sealed and became the highest SSSS level secret. It was a secret that only Jiendi had access to. Even Tomono Kakaze herself did not have the right to access it. In any case, Tomono Kakaze's life was saved by Gohan. There was no reason for her not to repay his kindness. Favors were really a wonderful thing. They often appeared together with one's personality. Even a machine intelligence like the highest intelligence was no exception. They could even break the preset rules for favors. Gohan only told Tomono Kakaze about this matter. He did not tell anyone else, not even Yaoguang himself. Gohan. If he told too many people, the risk of the secret being leaked would increase. Therefore, Gohan could only bury this secret in his heart. He wanted to find the traitor by himself. Time flew by like flowing water, and a day passed quickly. Early the next morning, Gohan, who had just gotten up, received an order to come to the Titan Star Guard mansion, which required Gohan to arrive at the conference room of the Titan Star Guard mansion before 10 a.m. to participate in the post-war summary meeting. This meeting was a routine meeting after every war. Just like the meeting 6 months ago, the main task was to summarize the various experiences of the war. At the same time, the sword-bearers who made outstanding contributions in the war would be praised and various rewards would be given out on the spot. All in all, this was a meeting where all the sword-bearers could effectively relieve their fatigue after the intense and painful war. At the same time, generous rewards were used to motivate everyone. Theoretically, this meeting should be held the day after the war ended. However, as Yaoguang planned to hold the succession ceremony during this meeting, the meeting was delayed until now. 10 minutes before 10 a.m., Gohan appeared at the entrance of the Titan Garrison's conference room. Gohan saw Kurakin and Leslie Dracula standing at the entrance of the conference room from afar. They seemed to be waiting for something. "Gohan, you're finally here." Seeing Gohan, Leslie Dracula and Kurakin immediately greeted him. It seemed like they were waiting for Gohan. Gohan had a special relationship with the two of them. It was not surprising that they were waiting for him at the entrance. However, Kurakin and Leslie Dracula had an interesting expression on their faces. They seemed to want to say something, but they were hesitant and worried. "Gohan, don't say anything after you go in. Don't get into any conflict with those people before the meeting ends. Otherwise, you'll fall into their trap," Leslie Dracula whispered into Gohan's ear. Trap? Gohan was stunned. He thought it was a trap that the traitor had set up for him. This caused Gohan to be in disbelief. Could it be that the traitors were so arrogant that they could brazenly frame him? However, Gohan quickly realized that it was definitely not a trap set up by the traitor. It was a trap set up by the other famed sword-level sword-bearers. Although he had been in Shanghai Pass for 6 months, he had been staying in the game for the past 6 months. His reputation and strength had not spread. Even the fact that he had killed 3 great wizards was accidentally attributed to Yaoguang. When the famed sword-level sword-bearers heard that he was about to take over the position of the lunar star from the lowest position of the guardian of the *T star, they were naturally unhappy. They wanted to embarrass him. Therefore, there must be a trap that they had set up for him in the conference room. "It's fine. It's not certain who's going to set whom up," Gohan said to Kurakin and Leslie Dracula with a smile. Chapter 10-12. Gohan calmly brought Leslie Dracula and Kurakin into the conference room. However, it was different from what Leslie Dracula had expected. The atmosphere in the conference room was unexpectedly harmonious. Everyone was happily chatting with the people around them. None of them paid attention to Gohan, as if they didn't care about Gohan at all. That's strange. I clearly heard them whispering about how they were going to deal with Gohan. Did I hear it wrong? Seeing this scene, Leslie Dracula muttered to herself in confusion. No. A newbie stole the position of Lunar Guardian. Even if they are noble enough to not cheat me, they shouldn't be as indifferent as they are right now. At the very least, they should be glaring at me. Gohan smiled disdainfully. Their natural behavior right now is the most unnatural. Look, none of them are looking at me right now. In fact, they have 100 pairs of eyes in their hearts, and all of these 100 pairs of eyes are staring at me. Gohan's words were not spoken in a whisper, but in a loud voice that did not hold back at all. As soon as Gohan's voice fell, the atmosphere in the conference room dropped by more than 100 degrees. The entire space seemed to have frozen, and no one spoke anymore. Therefore, the position of the Lunar Guardian should be taken by me. Look at these people, they have clearly prepared such a gift for me, but they don't even have the courage to look at me. Wouldn't passing the position of the Lunar Guardian to them be spoiling the great plan? After Gohan said this, no one dared to pretend to be silent anymore. Everyone glared at Gohan. If eyes could catch fire, then the entire conference room would probably be burning. That's more like it. Gohan smiled. Let me see what you've prepared for me. After saying that, Gohan looked around and found that there didn't seem to be anything unusual in the conference room. The floor was clean and tidy, especially the tiles on both sides of the conference room. They were wet, and it was obvious that they had just been mopped. The chairs were also neatly arranged. Even the chair closest to Yaoguang was reserved for Gohan. There didn't seem to be any strange mechanisms or traps waiting for Gohan in the conference room. It seems that everyone is very friendly to me. I feel a little bad that they purposely dragged this aisle. Gohan walked to the aisle and said with a smile. This aisle was the only way from the entrance of the conference room to Gohan's seat. This was the only way that Gohan could reach his seat. If Gohan walked to the entrance of this aisle, he would not continue to walk in. Instead, he looked at the slightly wet aisle and said, I wonder if everyone knows how to distinguish between water and glue? When the word glue came out of Gohan's mouth, some of the sword-bearers could not help but tremble. The word glue touched on the secrets in their hearts. In fact, it's very easy to distinguish. Water flows, but glue can't, especially 1502 glue. It looks so clear that you can see the bottom, but in fact, it's a pool of dead water. As soon as Gohan's voice fell, the atmosphere in the entire conference room instantly became extremely awkward. No one expected Gohan to see through their carefully laid trap at a glance. So they disguised the glue on the ground as if it had just been dragged. Leslie Dracula only then realized what the trap these sword-bearers had set for Gohan. As everyone knew, 1502 glue was the product of 502 glue after 10 generations of upgrading. It had the adhesion ability comparable to steel. This 1502 glue looked like ordinary water when it was not used, but once it came into contact with something, it would immediately stick to it. Even if an armored vehicle drove at full speed, it would not be able to separate these two things. If Gohan really stepped on it, then Gohan would immediately be like a fly stuck to the ground, unable to move. If Gohan accidentally took too big a step and his shoes were too loose, then Gohan's feet might directly fall out of his shoes, and then his whole body would fall to the ground. At that time, Gohan's whole body would be like a tile on the aisle. It was possible that Gohan would have to give up a layer of flesh to be able to get out of 1502. By that time, how would Gohan have the face to take over the position of the Sun-Moon Guardian? Unfortunately, these sword-bearers had somewhat underestimated Gohan's eyesight. Otherwise, it was very likely that they would have succeeded. Do you know what kind of image you have in my eyes now? Gohan, who had seen through all this, seemed to have no intention of letting these sword-bearers off. He used a tone of lecturing these sword-bearers. Childish, you guys are really childish to the point of being cute. These are just little tricks that kindergartners use to tease their classmates. I didn't expect a dignified sword-bearer to also use these kinds of tricks that kindergartners would use. Please, this is Shanhaguan where you can die at any time, not a kindergarten where you can play around happily. Next time, please use more brains and think of more mature method. Otherwise, if the people of the Sun Star find out, who knows how they will laugh at us. At this point Gohan sneered, "You guys don't care, but I, the Sun Moon Guardian, can't not care. Damn it. I don't need you to teach me a lesson." Finally, someone could not stand Gohan's infuriating words. He angrily slammed the table with both hands and stood up. He slammed the table with both hands and scolded loudly, "Surnamed Gu, it's fine that someone tipped you off, but you actually have the cheek to teach us a lesson here? You haven't even determined the position of the Sun Moon Guardian yet, and you dare to speak so shamelessly here? Do you have any shame? If you know what's good for you, get out of here immediately and go back to your Shising garrison to be a pile of sh*t. This sword-bearer's words were like a spark, instantly igniting the entire conference room. Dozens of sword-bearers slammed the table and stood up, pointing at Gohan's nose and scolding him angrily. For a moment, the entire conference room was filled with chatter, a stark contrast to the previous hell-like atmosphere. At least a dozen people used different methods to curse at Gohan, mocking Gohan from the beginning to the end. At this moment, it showed the quality of the sword-bearers, as well as their attitude towards the person and not the matter. Although there were dozens of people cursing at Gohan at the same time, the target of their curses was limited to Gohan. None of them extended their curses to Gohan's relatives. Otherwise, if they were in front of ordinary people, they would have cursed at all 18 generations of Gohan's ancestors. Of course, these sword-bearers also had to be thankful that they did not curse Gohan's relatives. Otherwise, it would be hard to guarantee that Gohan would not let them leave the conference room in one piece. Gohan's relatives had always been Gohan's biggest reverse scale. The fact that Gohan was willing to challenge the Lun Yen family for the sake of the Black Tortoise was the best proof of that. Don't argue with me. You guys are especially childish. Faced with the sword-bearer's curses, Gohan maintained a calm expression. Firstly, I've already said it. Only childish children would scatter 1502 on the ground. Secondly, do you really think that no one can walk over this 1502? Wait, what does this person mean? Before the sword-bearers could react to what Gohan was saying, Gohan directly stepped onto the path, filled with 1502. All the sword-bearers widened their eyes in shock. They did not expect Gohan to step onto the path, even though he knew that the ground was covered with 1502 after discovering their scheme. You're courting death. Some of the sword-bearers had such a joyful thought. Just as they were about to enjoy the sight of Gohan stuck to the ground like a fly, they were shocked once again. The 1502 on the ground were like real water, allowing Gohan to walk over easily. His footsteps did not stop at all. By the time the sword-bearers reacted, Gohan had already reached his position at the very front. This doesn't make sense. Could he have flown over? The sword-bearers sitting at the side of the path immediately began discussing in disbelief. In their opinion, the only way to pass through so easily was to fly. That Gohan seemed to have walked over, but in reality, he must have used some special method to fly over the surface of the 1502 without actually touching it. If Gohan really flew over, then how could they explain the footsteps? Even an idiot would know that there would not be footsteps if he flew over. Look, there are footprints there. One of the sword-bearers pointed at a certain spot in the path and exclaimed. The other sword-bearers immediately looked in the direction that the sword-bearers were pointing at. Indeed, there was a very obvious footprint on the watermark of the 1502. There's one here too. There's one here too. Very soon, the others also found the footprints on the path. At this time, even the thickest person would not have the face to say that Gohan flew over. But if Gohan really walked over, then why was he not stuck to the 1502? The sword-bearers racked their brains but could not find the answer to this question. F***ck. We must have bought fake goods. These 1502 are all fake. The sword-bearers who were the first to slammed the table again, and stood up. Then, he took a step and walked to the path that Gohan had just walked over. As he walked, he shouted, "Fake! They're all fake!" The result was obvious. When the sword-bearers took a step on the path, his leg seemed to be forcefully pulled by something. In order to prove that the 1502 was fake, the sword-bearers used a lot of strength to walk. As a result, he lost his balance and one of his feet slipped out of his shoe. It looked like he was about to fall on the ground full of 1502. Chapter 10:13. Go! The horrified swordsman watched his face getting closer and closer to the ground. Just as he was about to merge with the wet 1502, he suddenly felt his waist being hit by something. His whole body was knocked away like an ice pot, and he was sent flying. When he finally landed on the ground, he was already far away from the passageway, narrowly avoiding the fate of becoming a human brick. Which brother is it that helped us? I, Liyuetion, am eternally grateful. It turned out that the rash swordsman was called Liyuetion. It sounded like a scholarly name. Who would have thought that it would belong to such a burly man? Liyuetion had thought that it was one of the other swordsmen who had helped him out of the passageway to save his face. However, when Liyuetion's gaze swept across the swordsmen of famed sword rank, he did not see any of them showing an expression of, "I saved you." On the contrary, all the swordsmen subconsciously looked at Gohan, while Gohan looked back at them with a smile. At this moment, even Liyuetion knew that the one who had saved him was not another swordsman, but Gohan, whom he had just scolded. Liyuetion did not know what to do. He wanted to express his gratitude to Gohan, but when he thought of how he had insulted Gohan, he felt that he was too ashamed to say thank you. In the end, he could only bow to Gohan, then sullenly return to his seat, not saying another word. At the same time, the other famed sword-rank swordsmen's evaluation of Gohan began to rise. Previously, they had thought that Gohan was just a useless piece of trash, who had obtained Yaoguang's approval through flattery and took over the position of Lunar Star's guardian. Now, they vaguely understood that Gohan might not have obtained his position through flattery. On the contrary, Gohan had obtained Yaoguang's approval through his own strength. Not to mention, just the ability to walk freely on 1502 alone was something that none of the famed sword-rank swordsmen present could do. As a result, the entire conference room fell into silence once again. No one said a word as they silently pondered what kind of attitude they should take next. At this moment, Yaoguang, who should have appeared earlier, finally appeared in the meeting room. He felt that the silent atmosphere in the meeting room was a little strange, so he smiled and asked, "What's wrong with all of you? Why do you have to remain silent when there's such a good meeting and award?" Silence. The meeting room was still silent, and no one relaxed because of Yaoguang's joke. "All right. Then let's start today's meeting right away." Yaoguang shrugged. "Everyone had a hard time in the previous battle. I heard that many of our brothers were seriously injured and had to lie in the medical bay for 2 to 3 days. There were also some brothers who unfortunately left us forever. First of all, we would like to mourn for them. Now, all of you, stand and observe 3 minutes of silence." This was a necessary part of the post-battle summary meeting, and it was something that was not allowed to be joked about. Every swordsman, including Gohan, stood up with a heavy heart. They lowered their heads and sincerely mourned for the swordsmen who had sacrificed themselves. Their mourning came from the bottom of their hearts, because everyone knew that the next person to be mourned might be themselves. 3 minutes was a short time, but when the 3 minutes were over, there were still people who stood still and continued to mourn. "All right. It's time to talk about some happy things. Everyone has made outstanding contributions in the battle, and all of your contributions must be rewarded. I will now commend everyone. At this point, Yao Guang suddenly sighed. I'm guessing this will be the last time I'll give everyone a commendation. Boss! His words obviously touched the hearts of the other swordsmen. They all looked at Yao Guang with concern. Boss, it's not even 3 years yet. Stop talking, I will give everyone the awards. Yao Guang waved his hand and began to announce the various rewards that the famed swordsmen deserve. Although the scale of the battle this time was much larger than the one Gohan first arrived 6 months ago, the actual battle was far less intense. Many of the famed swordsmen in Titan Star Garrison stayed in the Guardian's mansion because they obeyed Yao Guang's order. They only joined the battle after the 3 grand sorcerers were killed. Therefore, the rewards they received were far less than the ones they received 6 months ago. 6 months ago, every surviving famed swordsman received 500,000 yuan and 50,000 hero coins as a reward. This time, the average reward was only 100,000 yuan and 5,000 hero coins. On the other hand, the guest Star Garrison and the ancient sword rank swordsmen who directly joined the battle received more rewards. Of course, these famed swordsmen already knew what their rewards were, so they were not surprised at all. Almost all of their attention was on Gohan. They wanted to know how many rewards Gohan received to be able to take over the position of Titan Star Garrison. However, at this time, Yao Guang very cunningly kept them in suspense. He did not directly announce Gohan's reward. Instead, he clapped his hands and whispered something to the service staff in the meeting room. The service staff immediately opened a small door beside the meeting room. More than 10 humans entered through the small door in a single file. Upon closer inspection, these people were none other than the 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen under Gohan's Shi-Sing garrison. This meeting was a meeting for all famed swordsmen. In theory, ancient sword rank swordsmen were not qualified to enter the meeting room. However, today, Yao Guang had unexpectedly invited 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen to this meeting room. This made many of the famed swordsmen very confused. However, the famed sword rank swordbearers that belonged to the Sandwater Ape Guardian Palace were well aware of the reason for the appearance of these 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers. Brothers, you must be very curious as to why I brought these 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen to this meeting room today. Yao Guang could see the doubt in the eyes of the famed sword-grade swordbearers, so she chuckled and said, I'll make a bet with you guys. Among all the famed sword-grade swordbearers here, other than Brother Gohan, I'm afraid that no one else will receive more rewards than these 18 ancient sword-grade swordbearers. How is that possible? That's impossible. How can my contribution be less than that of an ancient sword-rank swordsman? You must be joking. Yao Guang's words caused a huge uproar. Most of the famed swordsmen present did not believe that their contribution would be less than that of an ancient sword-rank swordsman. However, because of Yao Guang, no one dared to say this out loud. You don't believe me? Don't worry, we'll pick one by one and ask. Yao Guang smiled and pointed at the ancient sword-rank swordsman at the front of the line. He smiled and asked, Brother, do you know how much reward you deserve? Hearing the mighty lunar star guardian ask him a question, the ancient sword-rank swordsman was clearly a little agitated. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but he could not say a word. The audience, who had been waiting anxiously, was anxious. Jiu Yuechen, just tell the truth. There's nothing to be nervous about. I'm here. Gu Han's voice faintly transmitted from his position. Hearing Gu Han's voice, Gu Yuer seemed as if he had eaten some kind of perfect supplement pill. In an instant, his entire aura became completely different, and his tone no longer hesitated. Turning to a clear and bright voice, he replied, replying to Lord's words, this junior also does not know the exact reward, and can only make a rough estimate. I do not know if my estimate is accurate or not. Then tell me, what's your estimate? Yao Guang asked with a smile. About vaguely. I think it's about 1,000,000 RMB, or 100,000 hero coins. Jiu Yuechen hesitated for a long time before finally saying his estimate. Jiu Yuechen's words were like a bomb that exploded in the room. Everyone in the room wondered if they had heard wrong. This ancient sword rank swordsman had actually said that he would receive 100,000 hero coins. What kind of joke was this? The average famed sword rank swordsman only received 5,000 hero coins. Could it be that this ancient sword rank swordsman's contribution was 20 times that of the famed sword rank swordsman's? These famed sword rank swordsmen wanted to capture these ancient sword rank swordsmen and teach them a lesson. They wanted to teach them to be honest and not to lie so easily. Even if they were to lie, they had to make it sound as believable as possible. Don't boast like that. TSK, this kid needs to have some confidence. Yao Guang chuckled and clapped his hands. An electronic voice rang throughout the room. Ancient sword rank swordsman Jiu Yuechen has killed 500 junior witches, 112 intermediate witches, and 1 heaven witch in the battle 7 days ago. In total, he has received 2,420,000 renminbi, 242,000 hero coins, and 24,200 merit points. The number announced by the AI almost made the famed sword rank swordsmen fall off their seats in shock. Only now did they understand why Yao Guang had told Jiu Yuechen to be more confident. It turned out that Jiu Yuechen's own estimate was twice as low as the actual number. This meant that his reward was actually 40 times the average reward of these famed sword rank swordsmen. Even the most shameless person would want to crawl into a hole in the ground after hearing this difference. Right now, they could only hope that this Jiu Yuechen was an exception. The other 17 ancient sword rank swordsmen did not have such a terrifying battle record as Jiu Yuechen. However, reality once again slapped them in the face. When the AI announced the rewards for all the ancient sword rank swordsmen, everyone was shocked to find that although Jiu Yuechen was ranked near the top of the 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen, he did not have the most. The highest reward he had received was more than 280,000 hero coins. What was even more frightening was that the lowest reward among the 18 ancient sword rank swordsmen had received was 190,000 hero coins. Even so, they had completely crushed the famed sword rank swordsmen. Could these ancient sword rank swordsmen be spiritual sword rank swordsmen in disguise? These famed sword rank swordsmen had no idea how the ancient sword rank swordsmen had done this. They could only make the absurd assumption that they were spiritual sword rank swordsmen in disguise. Chapter 10:14. Boss, did the AI make a mistake? These ancient sword rank swordbearers could barely kill a dozen minor sorcerers. How could they kill thousands of minor sorcerers? And 200 to 300 intermediate sorcerers? They even killed 2 heaven sorcerers? This is impossible. This is impossible. When the AI announced the results of these ancient sword rank swordbearers, one of the famed sword rank swordbearers finally could not take it anymore and stood up. This was also a signal. Following this famed sword rank swordbearers, more and more famed sword rank swordbearers stood up to support this famed sword rank swordbearers. They also did not believe that 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers could kill so many Wu people. This was like a joke. This time, the sorcerer tribe had sent out a total of 200,000 soldiers. If the total number of sorcerer tribe members killed by these ancient sword rank swordbearers was about 10,000, didn't this mean that these 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers had killed 5% of the sorcerer tribe's entire army? This meant that they had taken down more than half of the sorcerer tribe's army. These 18 ancient sword rank swordbearers had wiped out the entire house of guardians on the main star. Silence! Silence! Yao Guang slammed the table. You can doubt me, but you can never doubt the AI. When have you ever seen the AI lie? Yao Guang's loud question silenced the entire conference room. Yao Guang spoke the truth. In this world, the AI was the fairest. It recorded every battle result accurately and strictly. In the past few hundred years, the AI had made very few mistakes. How could it lie to them? Alright, I won't say any more. Take a look at this battle recording and you'll understand. Yao Guang waved his hand, and the projector projected a battle recording in the air. This was a recording of the sword-bearers' battle. 18 ancient sword-rank sword-bearers had formed a tight formation and were rampaging through the witch tribe's army. They cut down melons and vegetables as if they were nothing. They were unstoppable. After the recording ended, all the famed sword-level sword-bearers fell silent. The video lasted for around 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, all the famed sword-rank sword-bearers had witnessed how an army of around 500 sorcerer tribe soldiers had been completely annihilated by these 18 ancient sword-rank sword-bearers. What was even more terrifying was that not a single one of the 18 sword-bearers had been injured. These ancient sword-wielders are all sword masters. A famed sword-rank swordsman covered his mouth in shock. At this time, most of the famed sword-rank swordsmen realized that the ones fighting at the outermost edge of the formation were not the sword ladies, but the ancient sword-rank swordsmen wielding their own sword ladies. Oh my God! Since when did sword masters become so worthless? There were 18 sword masters here. What the F***ck? One of the famed sword-wielding swordsmen did not even know what to say. He had never seen more than 18 sword masters in his life, and he had never thought that he would see 18 sword masters working together to fight. Yi Fan, what do you think of these ancient sword-rank swordsmen? Are they really sword masters? A swordsman nudged another swordsman next to him. As this person asked this question, everyone's eyes focused on this swordsman called Yi Fan. This was because Yi Fan was one of the few sword masters in the entire Shanhai Pass. Other than Yao Guang, Yi Fan was the only sword master in the Taiyin garrison. These famed sword-level swordsmen naturally did not dare to ask Yao Guang how he felt. They could only ask Yi Fan, who was next to them. Not bad. Their swordsmanship is probably better than mine, Yi Fan said after watching for a while. Sigh, brother Yi Fan, you are too humble. Hearing Yi Fan say this, the other famed sword-level swordsman began to praise Yi Fan for his humility. That's right. How could these ancient sword-level swordsmen compare to yours? Don't belittle yourself. Only Yi Fan knew that he was lying. His swordsmanship was only below average among the 18 ancient sword-level swordsmen. At least 10 of them had better swordsmanship than him. This discovery made Yi Fan feel extremely sad. His swordsmanship had gone down the drain. He could not even compare to an ancient sword-level swordsman. If Yi Fan knew that these ancient sword-level swordsmen had only practiced swordsmanship for less than 30 days, Yi Fan would probably be so angry that he would hang himself. At the same time, a few sharp-eyed famed sword-level swordsmen noticed that the 18 ancient sword-level swordsmen would occasionally return to the center of the formation to rest. When they returned, they would often receive a small bottle of potion from the sword lady who was in charge of commanding them. After drinking the potion, the ancient sword-level swordsmen, who had been extremely tired before, became lively again in just a minute or two. Their stamina quickly returned to their bodies. Clearly, these swordsmen relied on these potions to quickly recover their stamina. This was very tempting. All the ancient sword-level swordsmen knew that being able to quickly recover their stamina in battle was a huge advantage. Even if they were running away, they would be able to last longer. As a result, many of the famed sword-level swordsmen turned their attention to these potions. They planned to find these ancient sword-level swordsmen after the conference was over and think of a way to get a few of these precious potions from them. Now, does anyone have any objections? Do you think that the achievements of these 18 brothers are fake? Yao Guang asked everyone once again. However, it was different from the previous time when the crowd was agitated. This time, everyone was silent. If these ancient sword-level swordsmen really had the terrifying combat power shown in the recordings, then this kind of achievement could be explained. Alright, then I will now. Just as Yao Guang was about to give out the rewards to these ancient sword-level swordsmen, a famed sword-level swordsman suddenly stood up and cupped his fists at Yao Guang. Master Yao Guang, I have a presumptuous request. I hope Master Yao Guang can grant it. So it's Brother Yi Fan. I wonder what Brother Yi Fan wants? Yao Guang raised his head and saw that the person who had spoken was none other than the only sword master other than himself and Gohan, Yi Fan. Master Yao Guang, I would like to spar with these brothers and see if their sword skills are as good as those shown in the recordings. I hope Master will grant my request. Ever since he had seen the skills of these 18 ancient sword-level swordsmen, Yi Fan felt like he was on pins and needles. Yi Fan knew that his inner demons were stirred. He could not accept that his sword skills were inferior to these ancient sword-level swordsmen. If he did not spar with these ancient sword-level swordsmen, Yi Fan would not be able to calm down. This would be terrible for Yi Fan's future. Yi Fan, are you crazy? What do you think this is? How can you make such a ridiculous request? Sit back down. Yao Guang shouted. There was no way Yao Guang would allow this meeting to turn into a duel for no reason. Sigh. Since Comrade Yi Fan has made such a request, let's not reject him. Let's spar and see if my subordinates are worthy of their reputation. Gohan, who was sitting beside Yao Guang, suddenly spoke up. It was only then that the other sword-level sword-bearers realized that these 18 ancient sword-level sword-bearers were Gohan's subordinate. If these 18 ancient sword-level sword-bearers were really Gohan's subordinates, then as their master Gohan, how terrifying would he be? Thinking of this, everyone could not help but feel a chill run down their spines. Alright. Seeing that Gohan had agreed, Yao Guang did not object. After all, in less than 10 minutes, the master of Titan Star Garrison would no longer be Yao Guang, but Gohan. Gohan would be the future master of this place. Then let's go out and get ready. Just as Yao Guang was about to let everyone go out and fight, Gohan interrupted Yao Guang. Gohan shook his head and said, Why go out and make it so troublesome? I think it's enough to compete in this conference room. But Brother Gohan, there is not enough space in the conference room for everyone to fight, Yao Guang said with a frown. Who said there isn't? I think this big table is very suitable. It can be used as a stage, Gohan said as he looked at the conference table in front of him. This was a large oval conference table that was about 100 meters long and 10 meters wide. Putting aside the original purpose of the table, just based on its size alone, this table could indeed be used as a small martial arts arena. Alright. Yao Guang could not be bothered to care so much. If Gohan wanted to cause trouble, then let him. After all, Gohan was very capable. As a result, a duel inexplicably unfolded on a conference table. Yi Fan was the first to step onto the conference table. Yi Fan's first opponent was an ancient sword wielder named He Jigang. This He Jigang was naturally Gohan's subordinate. He was already over 50 years old, and could be considered a middle-aged swordsman. However, this middle-aged swordsman was one of the best sword-bearers out of the 18 sword-bearers. Gohan could not help but sigh after examining the swordsmanship of the 18 sword-bearers. If this He Jigang had started practicing swordsmanship from a young age, even if he could not reach the level of the mystic sword spirit, he could at least reach half the level of the mystic sword spirit. It was a pity that He Jigang was already old when he started practicing swordsmanship. It was a waste of good material. However, He Jigang was currently the best swordsman among the 18 swordsmen. Gohan had specifically chosen him to be Yi Fan's opponent. In Gohan's mind, He Jigang had about an 80% chance of beating Yi Fan. As for the remaining 20%, he was worried that He Jigang would be old and weak. If the fight became a long one, he might lose because of his stamina. Chapter 10-15. He Jigang was an ancient swordsman, while Yi Fan was a famed swordsman. Naturally, the two of them could not test each other's true strength. Therefore, Gohan and the two of them agreed that they were only allowed to use sword techniques and not sword essence. At the same time, they could only fight as ancient sword maidens. This way, the two of them would be on the same level. At the same time, whoever surrendered first or fell off the table first would lose the match. Very quickly, the two of them engaged in an intense battle. Sword light from both sides danced in the air, clashing against each other. All the sword-bearers were dazzled by the battle, and they began to praise the swordsmanship of the two sword masters. Their swordsmanship was truly brilliant. Of course, in Gohan's eyes, the two swordmasters' swordsmanship was laughably lame. If Gohan was Hejigang, just Yi Fan's first move alone would have been enough for Gohan to retaliate in 100 ways, and he would be able to push his opponent off the table in the first move. Of course, if Gohan was Yi Fan, the result would be the same. Either way, the two of them would not be a match for Gohan. Although in the eyes of Gohan, the two of them were so weak, but in the eyes of the two of them, it was an evenly matched battle, a fierce battle between dragons and tigers, a battle of equal strength. Yi Fan took advantage of his young age and good stamina to continuously attack Hejigang. As for Hejigang, because he was old, his stamina could not keep up with Yi Fan, so he could only defend passively. However, thanks to the toughness he had developed over the past 30 days, Hejigang's defense was watertight. After hundreds of moves, the two of them were still evenly matched. However, Yi Fan knew very well that he was gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. Because Yi Fan had been attacking fiercely, his stamina consumption was far greater than Hejigang's. By the time Yi Fan realized this, the difference in stamina between the two had been reversed. Instead, Hejigang, who was in his 50s, had much more stamina left than Yi Fan. In addition, Hejigang's swordsmanship was above Yi Fan's. So after a few hundred moves, the crowd could clearly see that Yi Fan was still at a disadvantage, and this disadvantage was getting bigger and bigger. Soon, he would lose. Even the crowd could see this, so how could Yi Fan, who was a master swordsman, not see this? So Yi Fan became more and more anxious. He could not accept that he had lost to an ancient swordsman. Not only did Yi Fan's anxiety not help him, but it also gave Hejigang a great opportunity. Hejigang aimed at Yi Fan's flaws and attacked several times. He successfully broke through Yi Fan's defense and left 3 to 4 deep wounds on Yi Fan's body. Yi Fan's blood and stamina were constantly flowing out. At the same time, according to the rules, if Yi Fan's body lost too much blood, the highest AI, which was monitoring the condition of both sides, had the right to declare Yi Fan's defeat. No, I can't lose to an ancient swordsman. Yi Fan's heart was burning, and because of the loss of blood, Yi Fan's consciousness was gradually blurring, and his rationality was weakening. As a result, the evil in Yi Fan's heart gradually gained the upper hand, causing his actions to break away from his rational control. He casually slashed out with a sword aura. Hejigang, who was ready to celebrate his victory, suddenly narrowed his eyes. He was horrified to find that Yi Fan had not followed the rules they had agreed on, and had waved his hand to attack with a fierce sword aura. The distance between Hejigang and Yi Fan was very close, and in addition to the fact that Hejigang was not a very powerful expert, and Hejigang was not prepared at all, this sudden sword aura instantly put Hejigang in an extremely dangerous state. He had no way of dodging this sword aura, and if this sword aura really hit his body, then even if Hejigang did not die, he would probably have to stay in the med bay for a day or two. Bang! At this critical moment, Hejigang only felt a gust of wind behind him, and another sword aura appeared out of nowhere. Just as Yi Fan's sword aura was about to cut Hejigang, it collided with the sword aura. After the collision, the power of the two sword auras cancelled each other out, and finally disappeared without a trace. Hejigang also narrowly avoided the disaster. On the other side, Gohan gently put down his right hand and retracted his index finger. Clearly, this sword aura was used by Guhan at a critical moment. Only Guhan could let his sword aura reach He Jigang first, and help him block this fatal attack. Yi Fan, what are you doing? Do you not even want your face anymore? Yao Guang stood up and roared angrily. Not only did this Yi Fan violate the rules of the duel, he even wanted to harm his comrade's life. This was absolutely intolerable, and he must be punished severely. I can't lose. I won't lose. However, Yi Fan did not care about Yao Guang's words. On the contrary, he became even more deranged, and waved the sword lady in his hand in a frenzy. One after another, sword auras flew towards He Jigang. If all the sword auras hit him, He Jigang would not even need to enter the medical bay. He could just wait for death. Oh no! Yi Fan has already gone mad. Guhan had very sharp eyes. He could tell at a glance that Yi Fan had entered a state of madness due to the deep obsession in his heart. At this time, Yi Fan could not be persuaded with just a few words. He had to beat him into submission. I'll suppress him, Yao Guang immediately said. The only people who could suppress Yi Fan were him and Guhan. Just now, Guhan had already saved He Jigang. How could he let Guhan do it again? No need. I have a good idea. Guhan smiled and shook his head. He then said to the remaining 17 subordinates who were watching the duel foolishly, "What are you guys still standing there for? Hurry up and help your comrade take down this crazy guy." Yes. When the 17 people heard Guhan's order, they immediately jumped onto the meeting table, without hesitation. They quickly formed the Tai Chi Yin-Yang formation with He Jigang, and surrounded He Jigang with the strength of 18 people. The Tai Chi Yin-Yang formation was not ordinary. It could be divided into two modes, external and internal. External, the 18 people's strength would be spread out to deal with thousands of enemies. Internal, the 18 people's strength could be concentrated to attack a single person at the same time. Although the sword chi that Yi Fan continuously shot out was very powerful, it was not something that an ordinary ancient sword wielder could defend against. But with the combined strength of 18 ancient sword wielder, it did not pose much of a threat. However, Yi Fan's continuous shooting of sword chi had greatly depleted the sword chi in his body. After a few minutes, the frequency of the sword chi was no longer as high as before. Don't waste any more time. Start attacking. Guhan, who was outside the formation, said calmly. His 18 subordinates looked at each other and simultaneously stabbed their sword mothers at 18 vital points on Yi Fan's body. Yi Fan did not know what to do. He could defend the top 3, but he could not defend the bottom 3, and he could defend the bottom 3, but he could not defend the right 3. Very quickly, Yi Fan's vitals were blocked by 18 sword maidens at the same time. At the same time, they knocked the sword maidens out of his hands. If he dared to struggle, the sword maidens would directly pierce his body. Even though Yi Fan's cultivation had gone berserk, he vaguely understood that if he moved recklessly, only death awaited him. I've lost. Yi Fan gritted his teeth as he said this. His blood-red eyes instantly withered, and then his eyeballs rolled back into his head as he fainted. Take him away. I'll deal with him later. Yao Guang cursed angrily. He immediately had the attendants help the fainted Yi Fan into a room to rest. The entire meeting room was once again quiet. However, the conference table that was used as the arena was riddled with holes and was on the verge of collapse. The table was covered with various sword marks left by the rampaging sword chi. Rather than calling it a conference table, it would be more appropriate to call it an ingenious tree carving. Everyone looked helplessly at the conference table that was too horrible to look at. They did not know how to proceed with the meeting. Boss Yao Guang, I don't think this table can be used anymore. Why don't we end the meeting here for today? We can continue the meeting after we get a new table. A sword-bearer sitting near Yao Guang suggested. The other sword-bearers nodded in agreement. Even Yao Guang appeared to be very moved. Indeed, the meeting could not continue in this state. They were not interested in attending Gohan's succession ceremony anyway. Here it comes. Gohan's heart lit up. He immediately stared at the sword-bearer who made the suggestion. Gohan's eyes were so sharp that the sword-bearer could not help but lower his head to avoid Gohan's gaze. So why was Gohan staring at this sword-bearer? The reason was very simple. Just now, Gohan had deliberately let the battle unfold on the conference table in order to use this situation to lure the human traitor out. Gohan already knew that the traitor's goal was to delay Gohan's succession as the guardian of the lunar star. Therefore, Gohan thought that instead of waiting for the traitor to make a move, it would be better to create an opportunity for the traitor to make a move himself. Therefore, Gohan deliberately let the battle unfold on the conference table. When Yi Fan's chi deviation happened, he also deliberately did not let Yao Guang directly suppress it. Instead, he let the 18 ancient sword-rank sword-bearers fight it out. His goal was to damage the conference table as much as possible, so that the traitor would suggest delaying the succession ceremony because of the damage to the conference table. So, this sword-bearer in front of him who suggested that the meeting be suspended was a human traitor? Gohan stared at this sword-bearer and thought to himself. Chapter 10:16. What's your name? Gohan raised his head and looked at the swordsman who was the first to ask for a temporary adjournment. I'm Zhou Zijian. I don't know why Master Gohan called for me. Zhou Zijian was shocked by Gohan's gaze. He even stuttered when he spoke, as if he was afraid that Gohan would jump up and eat him. Nothing much, I was just asking. Gohan snickered and didn't say anything else. This Zhou Zijian only asked to postpone the ceremony. In fact, there was no hint of a traitor. Gohan could not do anything to this Zhou Zijian at this time. He would wait and see. You said you wanted to postpone this meeting. Why is that? Gohan asked again. Of course it's because this conference table has been ruined by the battle just now. It's not suitable for the meeting to continue. It's more suitable to start after a new conference table is replaced. This Zhou Zijian stuttered. For some reason, talking to Gohan always made Zhou Zijian feel like he had lost all his confidence. What a joke. Is there any rule in this world that states that a conference table must be used for a meeting? Gohan looked at this guy with disdain. Could it be that the ancestors of the modern age, the Middle Age, and the Ancient Age all used such a huge conference table when they held a meeting? The others were speechless by Gohan's question. A meeting needed a mouth and a brain. The biggest use of a conference table was to put tea. To be honest, a meeting had nothing to do with a conference table. It could still be held without a conference table. But this conference table that's riddled with holes is really an eyesore here. Why don't we just remove this conference table? As Gohan spoke, the bureau chief slammed the conference table hard. The 100-meter-long conference table, which was riddled with holes but still remained intact, actually turned into a sand sculpture under the force of Gohan's slap. It fell to the ground and became a pile of wood powder. The entire conference table instantly disappeared without a trace. Okay. Now that this conference table is gone, doesn't the relationship between everyone become closer? This slap from Gohan shocked all the swordsmen present. Although they also had the ability to slap things into dust, they could at most slap a fist-sized piece of wood into dust. Wanting them to slap a 100-meter-long and 10-meter-wide conference table into dust with one slap, not to mention that they couldn't do it, they didn't even dare to think about it. This slap from Gohan was too terrifying. Is this guy really human? I'm afraid even if Kanzu and Jatian were alive, they wouldn't be able to do this. All the famed sword-level sword-bearers instantly fell silent. Not a single one of them, including Zhou Zijian, dared to say anything. They could only watch Gohan continue his performance. It seems that no one has any objections. Brother Yaoguang, I think we can continue with the meeting. After all, it's not easy for everyone to gather together. With so many famous swordsmen gathered here, Wu people might find a loophole. Therefore, it's better to carry on with this meeting and solve all the problems at once. It's too troublesome to run around. Gu Han said with a smile. Comrades, don't you think so? Gohan's gaze swept across the other famous swordsmen. Afraid of Gohan's power, these swordsmen didn't dare to say anything else. Previously, they had opposed Gohan not only because they didn't like Gohan's qualifications, but also because they felt that Gohan wasn't strong enough to become the Moon Guard. However, after seeing the strength of the 18 ancient sword wielders under Gohan, as well as the fact that Gohan had shown that he was able to completely disregard 1502, as well as the fact that he had just shattered the entire conference table with a single palm strike, it was clear that no one could match his strength. The biggest reason to oppose Gohan no longer existed. Forget it. This Gohan had Yaoguang's support, and he had unparalleled abilities. It seemed that the position of Moon Guard was already his. So what was there to oppose? Did they really have to wait a few days to see Gohan strut around in front of them? They might as well settle everything today and hide far away from this Gohan, pretending that he didn't exist. Thinking of this, all the famous swordsmen no longer objected. They all expressed that defending against Wu people was more important. It was better to end the meeting as soon as possible. If that's the case, let's continue the meeting. Yaoguang smiled bitterly. Clearly, Yaoguang didn't want to see the meeting turn out like this. At the same time, Yaoguang was very curious. Why did Gohan, who was usually very calm, seem so strong today? It was as if he had to get the position under Yaoguang's butt. This was not the Gohan he knew. Although he couldn't understand this, Yaoguang could only continue the meeting. Then, Yaoguang cleared his throat and said, "These 18 ancient sword-rank comrades have made great contributions. Even I, Yaoguang, feel that I am inferior to them. Invite these 18 ancient sword-rank comrades to come to my side. I would like to propose a toast to these 18 comrades." As soon as Yaoguang finished speaking, a long line of maids entered the room, carrying cups filled with wine. When Jiu Yuechen and the other 18 saw Gohan nod, they happily walked in front of Yaoguang and took the cups from the maid. Because the meeting table had been destroyed, a large space had been vacated. These 18 people could comfortably stand in front of Yaoguang, and it didn't feel crowded at all. Everyone drank the wine in their cups, and then Yaoguang introduced the 18 ancient sword-rank sword-bearers to them. After that, they followed the maids out of the room. After all, this was a meeting for the famed sword-rank sword-bearers. Before they became famed sword-rank sword-bearers, they did not have the right to be here. I believe that everyone has realized that there is still one brother who has not received his reward. That is Comrade Gohan, who is sitting next to me. It's not that I, Yaoguang, am stingy. The reason why I left Comrade Gohan's reward until the end is because Comrade Gohan's reward is too important. It needs to be presented at the end. Now, let's announce Comrade Gohan's reward. Yes. The electronic voice of the highest AI sounded in the meeting room again. Famed sword-rank sword-bearer Gohan has killed 271 junior sorcerers, 563 intermediate sorcerers, 89 heaven sorcerers, and 3 grand sorcerers in battle 7 days ago. He has received a total of 91,480,100 renminbi, 914,8010 hero coins, and 914,801 merit points. You didn't have to describe how shocked all the famed sword-rank sword-bearers were. Their minds had almost gone blank. Only now did they understand why Yaoguang would give the position of Guardian of the Lunar Star to Gohan. Yaoguang had not officially admitted that the 4 grand sorcerers had been killed by Yaoguang himself. It seemed that 3 of the 4 grand sorcerers had been killed by Gohan. For every grand sorcerer killed by the Wu people, he would receive 30 million renminbi, 3 million hero coins, and 300,000 merit points. In history, as long as one could kill 2 Wu people's grand sorcerers, the merit points would be more than enough to exchange for the position of guardian of the lunar star. Everyone had nothing to say about the fact that a famed sword-rank swordbearer, who could kill a grand sorcerer with his own hands, had taken over the position of guardian of the lunar star. Therefore, at this moment, after the highest AI announced Gohan's contribution, all the famed sword-rank swordbearers were completely convinced. They also started to sincerely acknowledge Gohan as their leader. Everything seemed to be back on the right track. Gohan was also very satisfied with the reward he had received. He didn't care about the RMB, but the 9 million hero coins had helped Gohan a lot. At least, the 9 million hero coins were enough for Gohan to synchronize all of his sword ladies to the first level. Tonight, Gohan's sword ladies would have to suffer again. After the distribution of Gohan's reward, the meeting finally entered the most important part. I believe that all of you have heard the news that I, Yao Guang, will be passing my position to one of you today. At this point, Yao Guang exclaimed, I, Yao Guang, have been in Shanhaiguan for 2 years and 9 months. In another 3 months, I'll be returning to the base city. Logically speaking, I, Yao Guang, should be happy to be returning to the safer base city. However, in reality, I'm very sad and in pain because I couldn't find anyone to entrust the Titan Star garrison to before I left. The position of Guardian of the Lunar Star is too important. Not only does it concern the safety of everyone here, but it also concerns the safety of the entire human race. Therefore, the position of Guardian of the Lunar Star must be shouldered by someone with sufficient strength. Since the previous Guardian passed the position to me, Yao Guang, I have to pass this responsibility to a true powerhouse so that he can protect everyone's safety. At first, I thought I wouldn't be able to find such a powerhouse before I left. I didn't expect God to send this powerhouse to me. He's Brother Gohan who's sitting next to me. Yao Guang pulled Gohan to his feet excitedly. The two of them held hands and looked very intimate. Initially, I was very troubled about how to prove Brother Gohan's strength to everyone. However, after the accident just now, there's no need for that. I believe that everyone has completely understood Brother Gohan's strength. Brother Gohan has only been in Shanhai Pass for 6 months. He'll be guarding Shanhai Pass for 2.5 years. I believe that during these 2.5 years, the Guardian of the Lunar Star, and even the entire Zhou-Tian Star Battle Formation will be impregnable. Even if there are twice as many Wu people, they won't be able to break through the place protected by Brother Gohan. Alright, there's no time to lose. I'll pull down my Titan Star Zhou-Tian Star's star banner now. Then, Yao Guang, who was talking excitedly, suddenly let out a heart-wrenching scream, which shocked everyone. They saw Yao Guang clutching his chest tightly. He pointed at the wine glass at the side and said intermittently in pain, "Poison, poison." After saying that, Yao Guang fainted and completely lost his consciousness. Chapter 10:17. No one had expected such an unexpected situation to happen at the last and most critical moment. The dignified guardian of the lunar star was poisoned at the critical moment when he was about to pass on his position, and he passed out with no one knowing if he was dead or alive. Fortunately, modern medicine was sufficiently developed, and there was also the existence of something as abnormal as a medical pod. Therefore, Yao Guang was sent into the medical pod immediately. According to the medical pod, it was an extremely troublesome virus. Even with the power of the medical pod, it would take more than 5 days to neutralize all the toxins. However, this outcome made everyone heave a sigh of relief. It did not matter whether it was 5 days or 50 days, as long as Yao Guang's life was not threatened, it was enough. As for the problem of Yao Guang's lack of combat power, the sword-bearers were not so concerned. Anyway, now that there was Gohan, who was much more abnormal than Yao Guang, as long as Gohan was around, not only could they make up for the lost Yao Guang's combat power, but they would also have more than before. Hence, Yaoguang did not seem so important anymore. Strange. Why would someone poison Lord Yaoguang? He has already decided to step down and will leave Shanghai Pass in 3 months. If the spy wanted to poison someone, he should have poisoned Gohan. Why would he do it to Lord Yaoguang? This is really strange. After calming down, all the famous sword-bearers present could not help but have such a question in their hearts. Yes, Yaoguang was about to leave Shanghai Pass, and his threat to the Wu people was about to be reduced to a minimum. There was no need for the Wu people to take such a huge risk to poison Yaoguang. On the contrary, poisoning Gohan was what they should do. However, in the end, the one who was poisoned was Yaoguang, which puzzled them. However, this question was not difficult to answer in Gohan's eyes. The reason why the Wu people poisoned Yaoguang was very simple. It was to delay the time for him to take over as the guardian of the lunar star. Now that Yaoguang had entered the medical pod for treatment as they wished, Gohan could not drag Yaoguang out of the medical pod. Even if Gohan really did that, he could not wake the unconscious Yaoguang. If Yaoguang had not taken the initiative to pull out the lunar star's great Zhou star hour banner, then Gohan would not have been able to inherit the position of the lunar star's guardian at all. Unless Gohan killed Yaoguang now and destroyed the old lunar star's great Zhou star hour banner, only then would Gohan be able to inherit the new lunar star's great Zhou star hour banner and become the new guardian of the lunar star. Unfortunately, no matter how much Gohan calculated, he still missed one move. He did not think that the Wu people would choose to directly poison Yaoguang. Because of Yaoguang's poisoning, the Wu people finally achieved their goal. They successfully delayed for 5 days, which was enough for the remaining 9 great sorcerers to be resurrected. I have investigated the origin of this batch of wine. This wine was stored in the warehouse of the Taiyang Star Garrison about 30 years ago. It has always been stored in a relatively hidden place in the Taiyang Garrison until today, when Yaoguang specifically asked me to look for some old wine. It was dug out from the depths of the warehouse. Because the entire warehouse has a complete surveillance system, I have even checked all the videos frame by frame. Therefore, I can guarantee you that this bottle of wine has not been opened before it left the warehouse, Tomono Kakashi said very seriously. Then what about on the way? On the way from the warehouse to the conference room, could someone have poisoned the wine? Gohan asked after thinking for a while. On the way from the warehouse to the conference room, only the maid who was in charge of collecting the wine had the chance to poison the wine. From the time the maid touched the wine to the time she handed it to Yaoguang, a total of 21 minutes and 32 seconds had passed. During these 21 minutes and 32 seconds, 19 minutes and 16 seconds were under surveillance, and the rest of the time was in the blind spot of the surveillance. Therefore, I can't guarantee that the maid did not poison the wine, Tomono Kakashi answered. But the maid is already dead. Gohan smiled bitterly. As soon as Yaoguang was poisoned, Gohan sent people to arrest all the maids, trying to find the culprit. However, when the famous sword-bearers found the maids, one of the maids who poured the wine for Yaoguang had already died from the poison. The clues had been cut off, but it was almost certain that the maid was the one who poisoned the wine, and the maid had obviously been killed by the spy. What about that Zhou Zijian? He is a serious suspect. I want you to look through his background immediately, as well as all the information since he entered Shanghai Pass. See if there are any important clues. Gohan quickly told her about Zhou Zijian, who was a serious suspect. All right. Tomono Kakashi accepted the order and left. As Gohan had asked for all the information related to Zhou Zijian, the amount of information was quite large. If they were to use manual methods to look through all the information, it would probably take at least 2 to 3 days to look through all the information. However, because Tomono Kakashi was the highest level of artificial intelligence, her speed of looking through the information was quite fast. In less than 10 minutes, Tomono Kakashi brought back the results of her work. Gohan, I've looked through all the videos about Zhou Zijian more than 10 times. I've looked through almost all the videos since Zhou Zijian entered Shanghai Pass for a year and a half. I can guarantee you that at least within the range of the videos, there is nothing strange about Zhou Zijian at all. He did not reveal any flaws. What about him and the maid? Did they have any contact? Gohan asked again. Absolutely not. All the maids are not allowed to leave the Taiyin Star Garrison, and the number of times Zhou Zijian has entered the Taiyin Star Garrison can be counted on one hand. Since there are many surveillance cameras in the public areas of the Taiyin Star Garrison, almost all of Zhou Zijian's actions are under surveillance. He always leaves after a meeting, and he has never stayed in the Taiyin Star Garrison for more than a minute. It's impossible for him to have any contact with the maid, Tomono Kakashi answered solemnly. In other words, this Zhou Zijian has the perfect evidence to prove his innocence. Gohan's expression was solemn. But do you think that's possible? My main suspect is perfect to the point where he doesn't reveal any flaws. Isn't this the biggest flaw? Are you saying that this Zhou Zijian is in disguise? He purposely put on such a perfect performance? Tomono Kakashi asked. Jina-chan, let me ask you. Can you monitor the situation in Zhou Zijian's house? Gohan asked again. I'm afraid that won't work. According to the law, every sword wielder's home is a place of absolute privacy. No public surveillance equipment is allowed to enter the sword wielder's home. Therefore, other than the public areas in Zhou Zijian's guardian mansion, there are no surveillance equipment anywhere else. I can't monitor Zhou Zijian's situation in his own home, Tomono Kakashi immediately replied. That's right. The Wu people have one more Grand Wizard who can open the Void Door. Although the Guardian Mansion has a shielding device that can block the Void energy, as long as Zhou Zijian can remove the shielding device in his house and open the Void Door, Zhou Zijian will be able to contact the Wu people through the Void Door. Moreover, among the 12 Grand Wizards of the Wu people, Ho-E has a special ability. He can place his target between the void and reality. The recording and surveillance equipment won't be able to see the existence of the spell. Since he is in between the void and reality, the shielding device that guards against the void door won't work. At the same time, since Zhou Zijian is a human, the shielding device against the Wu people won't work. After the two are combined, the defense measures that the humans use to prevent the Wu people from sneaking into the central area will be rendered useless. Zhou Zijian can use this to hide from all the surveillance equipment and secretly contact the maidservants, passing on their plan to the maidservants, Gohan said gloomily. Then everything makes sense. It seems like the spy is Zhou Zijian. Tomono Kakashi was a little emotional. Anyway, Gohan has temporarily taken over the position of the Lunar Star Guardian. You can order Zhou Zijian to be arrested now. We have ways to make him tell the truth. No, there's no hurry to arrest him. Gohan shook his head. His goal has been achieved. Arresting him now won't help. Besides, I don't think you'll be able to get the truth out of him. It's better to keep him and monitor him strictly. In 3 days, all the Grand Wizards will be resurrected, but we don't know what the Grand Wizard's goal is. Keeping this traitor might be useful when the time comes. A spy has always been a double-edged sword. When he's not exposed, he's our deadliest threat. Once he's exposed, he'll be our best dagger to attack the enemy. Hearing Gohan's words, Tomono Kakashi was silent for a while. Then, she said with some fear, "You humans are really scary. You can actually calculate so many things. There's nothing we can do. This is the way we humans survive, and it's also the way we humans die." Gohan sighed. No matter what, the Wu people will definitely launch another attack on humans in 3 days. Immediately pass my order to all the sword bearers at the famed sword level. Order them to rest and build up their strength in the next 3 days. At the same time, be on guard around them. All the food and drinks must be strictly tested. Make sure that no more people are killed because of poisoning. It's best for them to only use the food stored in their dimensional pocket. They're not allowed to eat the food prepared by the Guardian Mansion. I'm afraid that the food might also be poisoned. Then, Gohan listed dozens of different precautions. He defended almost all the areas where the Wu people could launch a sneak attack. Then, he asked Tomono Kakashi to organize the precautions into detailed rules and distribute them to all the sword bearers through her personal terminal. Then, he sent a request for help to the Shanghai Pass Management Committee, hoping that they could replenish all the sword bearers that were lost in the previous battle within 3 days. They also wanted to prepare at least a few thousand sword bearers. These sword bearers would not fuse with the Jotian Stars Hour streamers for the time being. When the sword bearers were killed in the battle, they would be ordered to fuse with the Jotian Stars Hour streamers. This way, they could quickly fill up the gaps in the defense and maintain the battle line at full strength. Unfortunately, this request was completely ignored by the Shanghai Pass Management Committee. It was not that the Shanghai Pass Management Committee did not take Gohan's request seriously. It was because they had carried out 3 rounds of conscription within the short span of 6 months. The number of sword bearers that could be conscripted had been greatly reduced. If another few thousand people were sent to Shanghai Pass, they might not even be able to guarantee the daily defense of the base cities. For the sake of their own safety, the base cities could not send sword bearers into the bottomless pit that was Shanghai Pass anymore. In conclusion, Gohan had done everything he could. 3 days later, Gohan would have to face the greatest test in the history of Shanghai Pass. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.